What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 9 rupees. Chapter 201. Advertise here. The battle scene at this moment is caused by the huge difference between the physical conditions. One person is at the top, one has been entangled with disease, and his physical condition is deteriorating day by day. But Roger is still able to burst out such power in such a situation, he is truly among the strongest in the world. He is just like Whitebeard and Edward Newgate, who charged into naval headquarters in his later years, facing enormous physical difficulties. Hoo. The gale was sweeping, blowing the robes and black hair of the two of them. Their eyes were extremely sharp at this moment, and they collided together. The void generates electricity, and the powerful aura collides, making the airflow around the two people a bit unusual. The battle only stopped for a moment, and the aura of the two reached its peak again, and the hilt of the knife in their hands was clenched. At this moment, a figure suddenly interspersed in and went straight to Roger. Lion Majesty, govern place earth coiling. It was Golden Lion, his blonde hair fluttering, his complexion was extremely majestic at this moment, and his hands slapped on the ground. Boom. The earthquake trembled and the dust rolled up in the opposite direction. In a flash, it formed a huge earth lion, roaring at Roger ferociously, and rushing to bite it. The latter's eyes sank slightly, and the long knife in his right hand waved. Stab. There seemed to be a flash of electric light in the air, and the space was distorted at this moment. The sharp slash was immediately above the sky, and went straight to the head of the huge earth lion. The whistling sound came into my ears, and they had collided together in an instant. Boom. The head of the huge earth lion was directly cut off, and large pieces of dust and gravel were falling down one after another. Roger, it's me. After the dust, the golden lion roared, shuttled through the dust, holding double knives, swooping down, with awe-inspiring aura. Call. Taking a deep breath, Roger felt his whole body boil. At the end of his life, he can still encounter such surging battles. This is undoubtedly the best prelude to the continuous struggle and hard work of his life. Come on, Shiki, come on, Jiāng Liú. I won't take a step back. Right here, defeat you, One Piece. I'm set. He let out a roar of desperate battle, the aura of his whole body seemed to be burning, his spirit was highly concentrated, and his soul seemed to be sublimated at this moment. Powerful, unrestrictedly powerful, the long knife was swung, the blade was trembling, the breath was rising, and it immediately touched the golden lion's double knives. Janbo, Shen Ming. 2 loud roars came out at the same time, and the dazzling brilliance shot out again, the long knife collided, trembling violently, waves of air, ripples quickly spread out. The electric arc kept flashing out, spreading between the two of them, and the two pairs of eyes collided, and all that could be seen was endless seriousness and high morale. Whether it is Roger, Golden Lion, or Jiāng Liú, this battle is a battle for their sublimation, a battle they must win with their firm determination in their hearts. With a tremor in the void, the Golden Lion's eyes twitched, turned over and flew out, quickly retreating. In an instant, Jiāng Liú's 2 knives fell from the sky and slashed Roger straight. The pupils of the latter shrank, and his face was extremely serious and solemn. Roger, facing unimaginable pressure, single-handedly confronted Jiāng Liú and Golden Lion, the 2 top powerhouses. Boom. The long knife collided again, Roger's bones were crunching, and the sweat on his forehead leaked more, but his eyes were still sharp. Aha! With a roar, Roger forcefully knocked Jiāng Liú away. But the battle still didn't stop. Golden Lion quickly added in, blasting towards Roger with a fierce slash. At this level of battle, there is very little technicality, and every detail is the result of countless collisions of thoughts and sparks. Roger moved around, yelling and colliding with Shiki. After a breath, Jiāng Liú rushed up and fought Roger again, and soon, he changed to Golden Lion. This kind of battle, the rhythm is extremely fast, the entire beach is continuously banging, shaking everyone's eardrums. The endless brilliance is flashing and rippling, pulling out a twisted light. The gale continued to spread to the surroundings, and the terrifying aura permeated the entire island. In the battle between the 3, Roger was one enemy and 2. In a short period of time, it has become extremely fierce, shocking the hearts of everyone present. Roger, Rayleigh muttered with serious eyes. He wanted to help Roger and drag one of the enemies, but Letterfield in front of him was not an easy one, he couldn't get out of him at all. In front of Garp, Waldo was very difficult to fight, but with the cooperation of several other companions, he was able to barely fight with each other. You bastards, get out of me. With a roar of thunder, Garp waved his fists and swept away the enemies in front of him, but soon, Waldo, Cyrus and others rushed up again and stopped him. Damn it, Garp growled. These guys in front of him were incapable of threatening him, but they were very annoying, and he couldn't beat each other for a while. The figure suddenly disappeared, and in the next second, he was in front of Waldo, and his iron fist was printed out loud. Waldo's eyes widened, only time to put his arms in front of his face, with a thud, he was blown out. But at the same time, Cyrus' great sword swung down from behind Garp. The former turned around abruptly, and hit Cyrus' big sword with another punch. Chi. Garp's figure quickly dragged to the rear, swept away by the sword. His eyes were serious and his expression was low. He glanced again at Roger, who was frantically attacked by Jiāng Liú and Golden Lion. His aura became stronger. Never let Roger get into such a dangerous situation. But for a short period of time, there was nothing to do. He couldn't break free from the siege of the few guys in front of him. In terms of numbers, the opponent has an absolute advantage. Along the beach, ravines were all over, and the sea was pushed farther away by the battle of three people, and it seemed that they did not dare to enter this area. The fierce battle is going on frantically, the light, the impact, and the fast shining in everyone's heart and eyes. Aha! Roger's roar. Roger! The shout of Golden Lion Shiki. Happy. Jiāng Liú's laughter. The battle became more intense, but the red blood dripping down Roger's body. He is starting to get hurt. Chapter 202. Advertise here. Boom. Thunder resounded in the sky, dark clouds were gathering, and heavy coercion covered everyone's heads in Greenland. The battle continued, and the battle between the three shocked everyone. The wind was roaring, the air current was surging, and the sea rolled into waves, but was forced by the breath of the collision between the three people, unable to get close to the coast. This is an unimaginable battle. Tick. The blood ran down Roger's arm, his eyes converged, staring at the front, waving the knife in one hand. Jiāng Liú, the Golden Lion Shiki, who took turns attacking, naturally placed great pressure on him, and under this countless collision, he was injured. However, the physical damage aroused the wildness of his spirit, and his will was higher. Roger's combat effectiveness was even stronger. Buzzing. On the long knife, emission bloomed, his face was terrifying and red light flashed in his eyes. Shiki, in this three-person duel, you have to exit first. Roger yelled, and the long knife swung out. Golden Lion swung down both knives, but was slammed out by the power of Roger's knives. Boom. After knocking down 34 big trees in a row, Shiki fell heavily to the ground, looking very embarrassed. 18 inches did he thoroughly arouse his brutality. But as long as he survives his strongest moment, based on his physical condition, he can't compete for the king's ownership at all. Roger, after today, whether you are alive or dead, the throne will be handed over. Your life will also end. The Golden Lion took a deep breath and stared forward. After that, his body moved again and ran forward. At this moment, Jiāng Liú is facing Roger in his peak state. The opponent seems to be unaffected at all, and the power displayed makes people feel heart trembling. As this Roger, unparalleled courage, terrifying power. Overbearing. He collided with each other time and time again, and the pressure from the long knife was hard to ignore. So, I'm going full fire too. Jiāng Liú suddenly yelled, a strange aura blooming all over his body. The two knives were intertwined, a red light bloomed in the eyes. Quality traction. One foot suddenly stepped forward, and in a short while, with him as the center, the ground within a radius of 10,000 meters fluctuated like a current. At the same time, everyone felt an invisible pulling force, pulling them in the direction of Jiāng Liú. Roger, who was standing in front of him, tightened all over his body, wrapped in an inexplicable pressure, and his body was out of control. Jiāng Liú waved his knife, and the knife bloomed. Roger's pupils contracted, and his body was actually heading towards the place where the opponent's long knife was. At this moment, he felt that the other party was like a black hole, pulling everything around him. Time, space, and light are all swallowed by the other party. Has Devil Fruit developed such a realm? It has completely surpassed the past. He admired in his heart. But at the same time, that high-spirited will also shook at this moment, extending towards the surrounding space. The will interfered with reality, the force of the pulling force was actually frozen in an instant, and Roger was also in control of his body in an instant. It was completely instinctive. Under conditioned reflex, the long knife was swung, and the light of the knife was shining. When this weird, powerful blow was blocked, Jiāng Liú was stunned, staring at Roger, who was full of serious faces in front of him. You deserve it, Roger. As soon as he moved, the next knife swung out again. Roger also held up his long knife and slashed it boldly. When there was another sonorous sound, shaking the surrounding void, rolling up ripples in the distance. Jiāng Liú, your future may exceed everyone's expectations. In your body, I have seen the potential that no one else has. Roger suddenly spoke, his figure backed away, avoiding Jiāng Liú's pounce. In this era, you are the most difficult opponent I have ever encountered. Yes, the most difficult one. Regardless of the despicable degree or the strength of the front, the level of the young man in front of him will be difficult to predict. The other party seemed to get rid of all the moral issues restrained by the world, and he was a pure pirate, and also the most authentic pirate. In the Rocks era, he and Garp teamed up to defeat each other. But at this time, what he faced was the teaming of the opponent and other people. The roles were completely interchanged, and he became the disadvantaged party. I'm honored, Roger. Jiāng Liú smiled. The two sides stepped forward again, another collision, and then backed back tacitly. This battle cannot be won in a short time, and his purpose is also very clear, which is to bring down Roger. Although his stamina is not good, his body is intact, and Roger is seriously ill, this kind of long-term, high-intensity combat is the worst for him. Seeing you, maybe the pirates of this era will have an idea. Are we old? Roger sighed softly. But today, my old fellow still wants to teach you something. After speaking, his eyes sharpened, and the terrifying conqueror's breath swept out instantly. Jiāng Liú was close at hand, and his whole body was shocked by this breath. His body was shocked, and his body stiffened by the shock of this conqueror's breath. At this moment, the long sword came to him, and he quickly avoided, but a blood stain was still being pulled out on his body. Tick. With blood flowing down, Jiāng Liú did not hesitate at all, stepping forward, his eyes glared. Conquerors rushed out and collided with Roger, offsetting the coercion from the opponent's will. This is a duel of will and a duel of flesh. Battle for the pinnacle. Not far away, Golden Lion rushed forward, but when he approached, Roger glared at him, swiping the long knife, and shot out again in an instant. This time, when Golden Lion fell on the ground, he spouted a mouthful of blood and his face was pale. He stared at not far away, the two people who were in constant battle, looking ugly. Was he unable to get involved in this battle? The battle continued, Golden Lion's eyes were frozen and he took a deep breath. Naturally, he couldn't accept such a result. There must be him in this battle of the pinnacle. While rushing, Golden Lion rushed over again, but this time, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Golden Lion, Shiki, from this moment on, your enemy is me. Golden Lion's pupils contracted, spit out the other party's name. Garp. He looked not far away, Cyrus, Waldo and others were lying there. At the same time, above the sea, pirate boats appeared. Someone is here again. Wait, what is that banner? Whitebeard Pirates. Chapter 203. Advertise here. The ships flying the Whitebeard skull flag suddenly appeared in everyone's eyes, and as the waves undulated, they were driving towards here quickly. Whitebeard Pirates. Someone exclaimed, eyes full of shock. No one can predict that this war will kill a Whitebeard halfway through. It is conceivable that this pirate group will definitely not arrive by coincidence. Its goal is very clear, and it is precisely to come to the war. Tell the captain, officers, Whitebeard is here. The pirates shouted loudly. The Whitebeard pirates are famous in this world. Their arrival will add a lot of variables to the outcome of this war. On the mobile, Whitebeard Edward Newgate, holding a naginata in his right hand, his long golden hair fluttering in the wind, his eyes serious and deep. He can naturally feel that the terrifying, majestic domineering power in the island ahead, and the surging wind, are telling him how fierce the battle on the island is. I hope I'm not too late. Spit softly, Whitebeard's eyes became serious. The Black Flag and the Flying Pirates teamed up to deal with Roger, which is absolutely unimaginable in the world. It is foreseeable that even the Roger pirates will find it difficult to support such a combination and the pressure will be huge. And his arrival is to stop this war. Let the era that should have been chaotic and runaway calm down again. Jiāng Liú, what on earth are you going to do? You even joined forces with clowns like Shiki. Whitebeard's eyes were sharp, staring at the island in front of him. Father, the battle is fierce, and a lot of troops are displayed in front of you. If you want to rush through, you may be in big trouble. Marco said condensedly. Nearly 200 warships blocked the sea in front of them tightly, and the dark gunfire was not easy to deal with. Marco, we are going to that island. Whitebeard said in a deep voice, his tone very serious. Marco was taken aback, then nodded. I see, Daddy. Then he suddenly turned around and yelled at the crew. Everyone, get ready for battle, let's rush over. Goal, Greenland ahead. The crew responded with loud roars, and they were all ready to fight. The momentum instantly became extremely powerful. As time passed, the Whitebeard pirate group gradually approached the 200 pirate ships. Let them come here. Just as the Black Flag pirate group was ready for battle to forcibly intercept the Whitebeard pirate group, a majestic voice suddenly came from the phone bug in front of the respective captains. This is the captain's order. Everyone looked at each other, then took a deep breath and waved immediately. Let them pass. The huge fleet immediately took action, giving way to a wide road from the middle. Father, what are they? Marco was stunned, looking at the other party's behavior, a little puzzled. Jiāng Liú, this stinky boy, is really bold. Whitebeard's eyes were more serious, solemn, and said in a deep voice. Afterwards, he fell silent and said no more. The Moby Dick quietly traversed the way the Black Flag pirates made way. The crews of both sides were observing each other, each with a vigilant mind. These people are all elite. Marco whispered. Big brother Jiāng Liú is so amazing. In a short period of time, he has organized such a powerful army. Whitebeard's eyes flickered, and he looked at the island ahead again. He didn't respond to Marco's words, and Whitebeard had more thoughts in his mind than the young boy. Forming such a large army, coupled with his strength, and the cooperation of a group of cadres, what exactly is this kid doing? That terrible ambition has already been revealed. On Greenland. Boom. Golden Lion Shiki collided hard with Garp. An iron fist as fierce as a meteor, making Golden Lion's long knife hum and tremble, his eyes sharp, staring at Garp. The dignified marine hero Garp, it is really interesting to work with a big pirate like Roger. Garp has sharp eyes. You are such a bad guy, but you are not qualified to judge me. Golden Lion Shiki stepped back and stepped forward. The ground rumbling continuously, large patches of dust gathered, controlled by him, and rolled towards Garp. Jahahaha. Since you are going to get involved in this big battle, let's take a good fight. Garp. In marine, There are not a few that make me look up to you, you just count one. Garp swept across with his fist, and the sky was full of dust. He directly shredded the huge congregation of dirt and came to Shiki's face, swinging his fist down. Quote. Is this an insult to me? Quote. Golden Lion Shiki's pupils were slightly condensed, and the two knives swung down, colliding with it again. Gar, you really are a dude who can't speak. I am full of anger now. Garp's figure flashed again, his eyes bursting with light, and he also roared, then let's have a fight. I'm going to use my fist to beat you to a bruised face. The battle between the two sides can be said to have entered a white-hot stage in an instant. The battles continued one after another, and the collision was extremely fierce. The other side. Sweat dripped from Roger's forehead, his body was shaking, and blood was flowing. Jiāng Liú's attack was fierce, cruel, and violent, and it did not give him a chance to breathe. The two knives were crushed down, and every swing was like two mountains being shaken. Even if he is Roger, under such a terrifying weight, he is still under great pressure. Every time he collided, his body trembled, and his internal organs were shaken. Roger, if your body is intact, maybe Lees can fight with me, 3 days and 3 nights, no, maybe 10 days and 10 nights. But, such a physical condition. Jiāng Liú spoke slowly. You may not be able to survive today. The strength of the two of them both broke out to the limit at this time, reaching the strongest. Now the competition is endurance, to see who can hold this peak power for longer. But Roger was seriously ill and lacked energy, and he had obviously begun to fall from his peak state. This battle has been going on for 6 hours. Every minute and every second is a high-intensity battle. Ha 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 ha. After all, I was underestimated by young people. Roger laughed. Jiāng Liú did not respond, he strode forward, and the two swords slashed down again. Boom. With a dull crash, Roger flew out fiercely. This scene also caused many people to stare. And. Chapter 204. Advertise here. Roger. The members of the Roger Pirates turned their heads at this moment, watching this scene in shock, with tension and worry in their eyes. This was the first time Roger was shot out since the start of the war, and everyone knew what it meant. Jahahaha. Golden Lion Shiki laughed loudly. Garp's face was heavy, staring closely at Roger who was flying out. Crack wipe. After smashing dozens of big trees, Roger stood up with his shaky body, spit out another mouthful of blood to the ground, and then grinned again. A moment of negligence made everyone worried. I'm fine. After opening his mouth to say this sentence, he walked towards Jiāng Liú again. After a while, Roger stood in front of Jiāng Liú again, his eyes shining brightly, and he couldn't see the injury at all. Compared to the previous second, his condition is better. Jiāng Liú doesn't think that the opponent is really injured and has no combat effectiveness. On the contrary, the protagonist of this era, every time he is injured, he will inspire even more terrible fierceness. Like the King of Luffy and his like, every time he gets injured, his combat power will increase greatly after he gets up again, and he will eventually defeat his enemies. You are one of the many opponents who can give me such a pressure, Jiāng Liú. With a flick of the long knife, in an offensive posture, Roger said softly. Next, start our second round. Jiāng Liú nodded when he heard the words, leaning forward slightly. In the next second, both of them rushed towards each other. Boom. When the long knife collided, Jiāng Liú flew out this time, and his figure drew hundreds of meters on the beach along the coast before stopping. His double knives were humming and trembling, and only after a little force did they stop. Interesting. After spitting out 2 words gently, he glanced toward the sea. The Moby Dick is slowly docking. In this battle, there are really many situations. The arrival of the Whitebeard pirate group, Jiāng Liú and Roger were naturally aware of it. But under this kind of battle, no one's arrival can affect their emotions. If you want to fight, then just fight. With his knees bent slightly, he was about to rush towards Roger and start the war again. But at this moment, a figure came into my eyes, making Jiāng Liú's figure pause. Odin. Jiāng Liú. Guangyu Odin roared, rushing all the way with double knives in his hands, with a high spirit of war in his eyes. The next second, he leapt high. 2 swords. Taoyuan Shirataki. This ferocious beast-like posture immediately made Jiāng Liú respond, and he grinned. Let you see, my growth since this time, Odin. Holding both knives tightly, he ejected in the next second. 2 swords. Ghost drop. The pitch-black knives rushed up in a flash, making a whistling sound, and in an instant they collided with Kazuki Odin's double knives. Boom. As if something had exploded, Kazuki Odin's figure stopped, his expression turned green at this moment, followed by a loud yell, and flew out towards the rear. Crack wipe. After smashing nearly dozens of big trees in a row, he fell one head on the hill again, and when he sat up, his face was completely blank. In the end, what happened? Almost the same swordsmanship as Roger. What is going on? What has Jiāng Liú mastered in such a short time? At this moment, he finally realized the gap between himself and this brother. But he didn't know where the gap was. The opponent, reaching the same height as Roger, is no wonder that he can fight like this with the very tall captain in his eyes. At the same time, Kazuki Odin also understood that he could not participate in this battle. His opponent is no longer me. Kazuki Odin looked complicated and sighed. Standing up and looking forward, he saw Jiāng Liú rushing wildly, turning into a stream of light, before he came to Rogers. Then, the two began a quick battle again. Swords shot everywhere, shaking the void, and there were chasms all around the two of them. Time passed slowly, and in a blink of an eye, the Whitebeard pirate group landed ashore. In an instant, Marco and others joined the battle. The battle situation changed again, and the strength of the two sides gradually became balanced. At this point in the field, the only opponent without an opponent is Whitebeard. He stood on the bow of the ship, looking down at the battlefield of Novosibirsk, but he didn't make a move, but was waiting for something. His eyes stared at the battle between Jiāng Liú and Roger, gradually becoming serious. The fighting between the two seems to be of equal strength for a while, you come and go, sparks are everywhere, but with his eyesight, it is natural to see that Roger will definitely not be able to hold it for a long time. The growth rate of Jiāng Liú is really fast and terrible. Whitebeard's heart turned and his eyes became solemn. At this speed, if the other party has not grown to the limit, then in the near future, perhaps it will really become the world's #1 in his mouth. Long war. His eyes drifted away. He saw the battle between Rayleigh and Letterfield, the battle between Garp and the Golden Lion, the battle between Cyrus, Waldo and others, who stood up again to fight with his children. I also saw Kazuki Oden sweating on the battlefield, roaring again, and then encountered a kid who can release thunder and lightning. How did he get together such a group of crew members? Whitebeard sighed. Suddenly, he remembered that Jiāng Liú had told him that he knew the trend of the future, and he couldn't help feeling a little startled. Can you really predict the future and know everything about the future? He frowned. As if an electric light flashed in his mind, the gazes at Jiāng Liú and Roger became more serious. Is that why he, in alliance with the Golden Lion, wants to kill Roger? Roger will become one piece. Suddenly, Whitebeard understood thoroughly. But soon, his complexion became complicated again. If he wants to choose who can become the king in the future, he still chooses to support Roger. This man is born with a unique affinity and indescribable charm, just like a natural king. Every step of his journey is made by himself. Even if he is seriously ill, he still will not give up his dreams, but will do everything he can to take advantage of the remaining time to realize him by himself. Whitebeard once imagined his future and his own death. If given the opportunity, he hopes to be like Roger, blooming his glory in the twilight, and die without regret. Boom. Suddenly, the battlefield in front burst out again. Roger flew out again, this time with blood stains appearing on his body and bleeding from his mouth. He was wounded again. Whitebeard's face changed slightly, and the next moment he jumped off the bow of the mobile. He is going to join the war. Chapter 205. Advertise here. Roger was wounded one after another, causing a cry of exclamation in the battlefield. Such a scene is unimaginable by everyone. The top pirate in this era is the overlord of this sea. His injury and showing disadvantages absolutely shocked the world. Jiāng Liú has the upper hand. Unbelievable, is he going to defeat Roger? If this continues, Roger's physical condition may not last long. On the battlefield, there was a murmur, and people's expressions were very serious and solemn, which was not a good omen for the people of the Roger pirates. But at this moment, another exclamation came out. Everyone turned their heads to look, and saw Whitebeard jump off the Moby Dick. Is he going to fight too? Whitebeard, Edward Newgate. People's pupils contracted, staring at the tall figure, their expressions were extremely solemn. In such a situation, the addition of Whitebeard can definitely reverse the situation on the entire battlefield. No matter which party he chooses to help, the other party will be under great pressure and even become dangerous. According to the fact that its crew, sons, and the Black Flag, the flying pirates were fighting against each other, it was obvious that their tendency to arrive in this war was already obvious. Is he here to help Roger? But why? Yes, why? In terms of emotions, Whitebeard and Jiāng Liú are brothers who have worshipped a handle and drank a cup of wine. No matter what, you should help Jiāng Liú. Call. Whitebeard took a deep breath, and then white gas erupted from his nostrils, his eyes became sharp and serious. In the next second, he strode forward, let out a low growl, and rushed towards the battlefield. The most powerful people in this era are about to start a war. Someone roared, the tone trembling and excited. There is no doubt that this is an exciting battle for everyone. The powerhouses standing on top of the world are almost concentrated on this island at this moment. They are in a chaotic battle. Boom 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 boom. As Whitebeard stepped forward, the entire battlefield was shaking and making a loud noise. He launched a charge, and then when he reached Jiāng Liú, he leapt high, the clouds in his hands were cut, and the dazzling light appeared, condescending and falling down. Jiāng Liú, below Jiāng Liú holding a pair of knives, turned around, and when he saw Whitebeard's moment, his eyes condensed, his eyes sharpened. With a flick of his wrist, his double knives cut through the void, and rushed up fiercely. Boom. The long knife collided and a wave of air rolled out. Under Jiāng Liú's feet, the ground rippled like water waves, and the violent air current roared around and spread out. As I said, the next time I meet, it will be the enemy and the opponent. On the battlefield, I, Whitebeard, can't release water. Whitebeard shouted. He held Kong Yun with both hands and cut with all his strength. Jiāng Liú held a pair of knives above his head, blocking Whitebeard's long knives. His face was dignified and serious, and his voice was low. Newgate, did you choose to help Roger? This era is our era, Jiāng Liú. You are still young, the next era will belong to you. Why rush for a while? Whitebeard yelled, and Kong Yunchi tried his force again and slashed down. But soon, it was blocked by Jiāng Liú again. The strength of the two, the long knives kept humming and colliding, the air currents around the body became extremely chaotic at this moment. There is no era in life, Newgate. When you are young, if you can seize opportunities and achieve great dreams, why should you wait until the twilight years? The hero is late, and thousands of people spurned it. How desolate it is, it's not cool. Jiāng Liú grinned and laughed loudly. He paused with both hands, then retracted back in the next second, and then rushed up again. Whitebeard did the same, and soon the long knife collided again, making a loud bang. You don't have any desire for hegemony and dominance, but this world will not be silent because of your stillness. Hearing Jiāng Liú's words in Whitebeard's ears, his expression was very serious, and he knew that he could not persuade this friend. Then fight a battle, Jiāng Liú. Use victory or defeat to determine who the king of this era is. Jiāng Liú laughed, holding the long knife high, and his movements were wild and fierce. Right on my mind. Pirate, always speaks with strength, isn't it? After the two collided once, the strong reaction force caused them to retreat, but shortly afterwards, they rushed towards each other again. Boom. You are right, the pirate speaks with strength. Then let you see the power of my Whitebeard. Whitebeard roared. Find flowers. His power exploded, and at this moment he appeared extremely powerful, extremely domineering. In his prime of life, Edward Newgate was absolutely different from the twilight he showed during the battle for the top. He was energetic and powerful. Every breath was the result of the blood boiling in the body, like a bellows roaring. It is even more different from Roger's incomparably powerful explosive power, and the time of weakness ushered in. Whitebeard Edward Newgate, in this era, is definitely the strongest in the world and the ceiling of the entire world. Roar. Jiāng Liú also roared, fighting with the man in front of him, he wanted to do his best. Boom. There was another explosion, the ground cracked, the wind howled, and the sea not far away screamed in fear, fearing their might. 0. The pace of the battle became more and more frequent, and the speed of the two battles was faster. Boom 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 boom. Constantly swinging the knife, constantly changing the position, constantly turning around, running, and then rushing towards each other. The continuous sound of tremors revealed a more intense appearance than it was just before the battle with Roger. Whitebeard and Jiāng Liú, a war between brothers. It's unbelievable, and what is even more unimaginable is that the people fighting at this moment are still brothers. Bai Shaoji, Jiāng Liú, you guys. People were shocked, Kazuki Oden's eyes widened, watching the sudden battle. In fact, his heart is also very complicated. The three of them once drank a cup of wine together and worshipped a hand. It was the brotherhood of a loved one. But in the end, time changed, he left the Whitebeard pirates and joined Roger. Jiāng Liú established the Black Flag himself. Today, they are in 3 different pirate groups. Today, there are different camps and positions, and even each other as opponents and enemies, and they have to be forced to fight. In the battlefield, Jiāng Liú's eyes burst into light, and Whitebeard's eyes were crazy. The two eyes collided, and the void was electrified and pierced. This is no less than Roger's battle. You have grown too fast, Jiāng Liú. Go on with this trend. In this world, no one can stop you in the future. Whitebeard said in a deep voice. Don't tell me, as a brother, you are afraid of me. Jiāng Liú smiled. That will make me sad. 1. Chapter 206. Advertise here. Fear of you. Whitebeard's eyes condensed, and then he laughed. What are you kidding? Soon afterwards, his face sank again. I'm just worried that you will be swallowed up by your ambition. Jiāng Liú was noncommittal, and smiled softly. Really? The weapons of the two quickly collided, and the ripples spread out, shaking the audience. Receive troops. Truce, Jiāng Liú. The war you caused will affect the development of the entire world, and it will affect the near future. Whitebeard shouted in a deep voice. The bullet is out, how can I get him back? Newgate, although you and I are brothers, I still want to tell you something. Don't be too naive and ego. Jiāng Liú swung his knife and slashed the void in front of him, and then fell heavily in front of Whitebeard's eyes, blocked by the clouds. The future that I led, the things to be done are things that neither you nor Roger can imagine and witness. Yes, I don't know when you have become so arrogant. Whitebeard yelled. His eyes stared at an angry light, and he was very disappointed with Jiāng Liú's performance at this time. In his impression, the other party was not like this. He withdrew quickly, and with a bang on his right fist, a vibrating light was revealed, which quickly expanded into a spherical wave. Shock Fruit ability. This is the legendary horror ability that can destroy everything, shatter the void, shake the island, and cause a big tsunami. It is also the reason why Whitebeard is known as the strongest person in this era. Upon seeing this scene, Jiāng Liú's eyes condensed, and the two knives trembled as thick waves swept up, and the space seemed to be compressed and distorted at this moment. Quality Fruit, unlimited increase. In the next second, the two attacks that contained the majestic Devil Fruit ability, capable of destroying everything, crashed together. Boom. Circles of ripples are spreading, and waves of vibrations radiate to the surroundings quickly. The beach was shattered, the tree was shaken to shreds, and the sea not far away trembled violently, and a big wave was quickly set off. Above the two of them, the sky creaked at this moment, extending out cracks like branches and branches, spreading across the entire void. Everything is breaking. The earth, the sea, and the sky are all cracked. The battle between these two people can destroy everything. It's terrible. Let them fight. What will this island be like? What will the end of this sea be? The other people fighting with each other stopped subconsciously and looked at the space blankly. The area where the two of them are located is as if a barrier has appeared. Anyone who is unexpected to the barrier can no longer touch this void, isolating everything. Whether it is stones, trees, insects, flowers or plants, as long as they touch the edge, they will quietly become shattered. Whitebeard's fists were still colliding with Jiāng Liú's double knives, and the ripples continued to spread out, like undulating water. Aha! Roar! The eyes of the two were facing each other, and they both let out a low growl. The ground under their feet was collapsing downwards, and their expressions were hideous and crazy. This is a battle against each other, and it is also a full-fledged battle that does not retreat at all. Soon, the two quickly retreated, and then the next second, they ran into each other again. Boom. It was another collision that shocked the world. The sea was surging, the void was cracking, the wind was howling, and the fluctuations were shaking everything. My vibrating fruit can shatter everything, but his attack is also full of weight. Boy, it's more powerful than I thought. Whitebeard's heart trembled, his eyes dignified. This is what he has encountered, a rare opponent who can compete head-on with his shock fruit. With such strength, it is no wonder that the other party has such huge ambitions. It makes me feel difficult. Jiāng Liú's strength was beyond Whitebeard's expectation. Even if he took the shot himself, he couldn't easily suppress the opponent. What makes his heart palpitations in particular is that the other party seems to have a hidden power, and it hasn't burst out yet. In the battle, I have been suppressing and restrained. This kid has his own whole cards. He is restraining himself. Whitebeard's eyes changed, and his heart was shocked. Unconsciously, the momentum the other party showed gave him such a feeling. So in the next second, Whitebeard's strength increased again, and shock fruit's strength exploded, crashing into Jiāng Liú. Boom. The sky was shattered, the dark clouds above the head split directly, and an oblique line appeared in people's field of vision, causing exclaim. Jiāng Liú shook his whole body, and a blood stain leaked from his mouth. This force was so strong that his whole body was stiff, and his limbs were uncontrollable, and he was shaking with a terrible frequency. But soon, he changed his quality and forcibly stabilized. The blood in his body boiled, and his strong physique quickly recovered from his dark wounds. Looking at Whitebeard again, Jiāng Liú grinned. A battle that suits my taste, Newgate. He simply inserted the two knives back into the scabbard, and then clenched his fists. Then come to a battle. When the words fell, his body suddenly rushed forward, and his right fist swung out loudly. The punch was thrown, there was the mass of a mountain, and the gale whizzed out in an instant. Whitebeard's blonde hair fluttered backwards, feeling the smell of suffocation. Boom. Fists clenched, and shock fruit's power burst out. Boom. The two fists collided, and the place where they were was once again exploded, and the void was collapsing and rumbling. Immediately afterwards, both of them had blood oozing from the corners of their mouths, and withdrew a few steps back. Afterwards, they rushed to each other again and continued to punch. Boom. With this punch, Whitebeard hit Jiāng Liú's face first, and the latter's Venus stared out in front of him, feeling that his skull was blown. But soon, his punch hit Whitebeard's face. The latter stepped back, his body swayed, and his eyes were staring at Venus, and blood oozes under his skin. It's beyond the fighting ability of ordinary people, and it's beyond the terrifying power of ordinary people. The attacks of the two were extremely terrifying, but they both carried such an attack abruptly. Afterwards, they went to war again. Fist to the flesh, the savage and brutal hand-to-hand combat began. Not far away, Roger was sitting cross-legged in the woods, with strong winds roaring above his head, terrible fluctuations spreading. How, Crocus, can my injury be dealt with urgently? Crocus frowned when he heard this, but watching Jiāng Liú and Whitebeard in the battle, he could only shook his head and said helplessly, yes. But you have to know that if you continue to fight, you will have less time to live. Especially, facing an opponent like Jiāng Liú. Roger smiled slightly. It's my honor. And, after a pause, his eyes became solemn. I can feel that there is even more terrifying power hidden in Jiāng Liú's body. Whitebeard may not be his opponent. Chapter 207. Advertise here. Whitebeard is not Jiāng Liú's opponent. Such words made Crocus stunned for a while, but these words came from Roger's mouth. For such a character, it is absolutely impossible to judge wrong. In other words, Jiāng Liú really possesses an unimaginable force in his body, and the battle has not been released yet. How can this be? Crocus sighed in shock. If this is the case, then who else in this world can stop Jiāng Liú? Ahead, Whitebeard and Jiāng Liú are still fighting, and the entire battlefield is screaming for killing, with flames, lightning, and the roar of weapon collisions everywhere. The long peaceful years of Greenland are gone forever. It is unpredictable whether it will survive the war. So, Crocus, the balance of this battle may be in your hands. Shiki can hold Garp. Letterfield and Rayleigh are currently in a difficult position to win, and Marco is fighting with Shiki's crew. Their battle and victory cannot be separated in a short time. The only one who can decide the course of this battle is still me, the battle between Whitebeard 18 and Jiāng Liú. Let me return to the battlefield and end this battle. Crocus. Roger said with a smile. But, Crocus is still hesitating, his medical skills are very good, and it is not easy to drag Roger, who is seriously ill, to still alive now. Even, it can accurately predict that the other party will only have less than a year's life. However, it does not include such high-intensity operations. Fighting against a strong man like Jiāng Liú itself carries the risk of death. Listening to the gunfire, and shouting in his ears, Crocus finally made up his mind, his eyes firmed up. What Roger said was not wrong, and it was the battle between the three that ultimately determined the course of the war. If Roger can have the power to fight again, he can control the victory of the battlefield. It is good. Crocus nodded his head. Afterwards, he looked at Roger, who was shaking and grinning in front of him, but he felt an inexplicable grief in his heart. The hero is late, even if Roger is so powerful, in the time when his life is about to come to an end, he is still so desolate. But despite this, the other party is still open-minded, looking at everything in the world optimistically. Even if it is his enemy. Bring it on. Crocus, heal me. Roger sat there, smiling. Crocus became silent, but he did not go against the captain's wishes anymore, but silently deployed reagents that could temporarily shield the body's perception and suppress his healing. It takes time. Roger couldn't wait. How long will it take? It depends on how long Whitebeard can take advantage of. Crocus turned his head and glanced at the place where the two were fighting, then retracted his head. For a while, I'm afraid they won't be able to tell the outcome. Ha 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 ha. Of course, Newgate is the world's top powerhouse after all, even me, it will be very troublesome to meet him. Roger laughed. Then it's okay. Crocus nodded. Then, he murmured again. One night, I can always make it through. Not far away, Jiāng Liú roared loudly, his terrifying aura constantly oscillating, and the vigor above his fists fluctuating vigorously. The Whitebeard shock fruit is so powerful that everything around it is twisted and trembling. The two looked at each other, and then attacked fiercely. There is no technique at all, it is pure offense, the collision of punches and punches, the confrontation of power and vibration. Jiāng Liú, this alone can't beat me, take out your hidden power. Whitebeard shouted in a deep voice. Jiāng Liú frowned and grinned, have you discovered it? Neither me nor Roger are simple characters. Are you underestimating us? Just with this kind of power, do you want to get out of this sea and become the king? Then you look down on Whitebeard too much, and look down on Roger too much. Whitebeard shouted, I have never thought about it this way. The development of this ability was originally designed to stand out from the sea and get ahead of you. Then take the crown in the dark. Jiāng Liú said slowly. But it's too early for me to show my full strength now. After a pause, he slammed Whitebeard with a punch, hit the opponent in the face, and knocked it out. After all, Newgate, you haven't made me feel the pressure. Soon, Whitebeard rushed back and hit him in the face with a punch. It's so arrogant. Bastard kid. Jiāng Liú also flew out. The resistance of the two of them is incredible. Even if they face each other's fists, they can still stand steadily, but with a daze, they wake up again. As time goes by, they are like tireless warriors, you come and go, constantly attacking each other. The battle has entered a long war of attrition. Gradually, dusk fell, and night began to fall. Several pirate regiments, marine personnel, all fell exhausted because of this long battle, without the strength to fight. On the battlefield, the remaining people are still fighting. The half moon is coming, hanging above everyone's heads. In the distance, a remote corner. Shanks, Buggy gathered together and faced Leonard and others again. I met you again, Shanks, Buggy. This time, you can't escape, obediently accept your fate. Leonard chuckled. Fart, our captain, but Roger, we will never lose. Buggy yelled. Look at us too much, Leonard. Shanks said in a deep voice. After a period of time, he was holding short sword, and there was already a mature breath and feeling on his face, giving people a strong and reliable aura. Have you changed a lot? But the battle during the day is still the same as last time, fleeing everywhere. Leonard said condensedly, staring at Shanks. For some reason, he faintly felt that the boy with a straw hat in front of him might become a powerful weapon in the future, and it was a big threat. It's time for us to counterattack, Shanks said solemnly. He looked at the young people in Haichi, panting, and a ray of light flashed in his eyes. Buggy, let's go. The next second, Shanks yelled and rushed over. Buggy was stunned, and then he couldn't hesitate, and rushed out. Time continued to elapse, and after a melee, it was unconsciously the next morning. In the mountains and forests, Shanks, Buggy, Leonard and others were all tired and collapsed on the ground. The result of the battle was irrelevant. You two guys are really capable. Leonard gritted his teeth and exclaimed. Don't underestimate the growth of young people, Leonard. Shanks said. Both sides lay there, and after a while, laughed loudly together. The sympathy between young people may have originated here. At the same time, Roger slowly opened his eyes. He slept all night. Is it all right? Crocus. Chapter 208. Crocus looked at Roger, who was energetic, and blinked, carrying dark circles under his eyes, a little weakened with exhausted energy. Okay, but are you ready? This kind of temporary stimulant consumes but you don't have much vitality. Taking a long breath, Crocus said with complicated eyes. I know, come on, I'm ready. Roger said with a smile, and glanced at Whitebeard and Jiāng Liú who were fighting in the distance. He paused and said again. I feel energetic now, this battle must be no problem. Crocus nodded, then put the reagent into the syringe, which was quickly adjusted, and finally came to Roger again. The latter smiled knowingly, and pushed up his sleeves, revealing his bulging arms. Go to end this war, Roger. Crocus said softly. The reagent in the needle tube was pushed into Roger's arm. In an instant, the adjusted reagent took effect, causing his body to shake and his heart beating more powerfully at this moment. In his eyes, red light flickered, and it quickly disappeared and returned to normal. You really have a way, Crocus, I feel full of power now. Visible to the naked eye, the injuries on Roger's body yesterday are all in rapid recovery, and the scabs formed in a short period of time, and then fell off, revealing new skin. Crocus looked at his masterpiece, but was silent for a long time, unable to speak. He knew very well that the phenomena exposed in the opponent's body were overdrawing the opponent's already low vitality. Even if this battle is won, how long can Roger last? Slowly stood up, clenched his fist, and picked up the long knife set aside again, and a smile appeared on Roger's face. His eyes were shining, radiating light, and stepping out. The second round has begun, Jiāng Liú. This time, I won't leave the field so quickly like the first time. At this moment, Roger's aura was completely different from before. He seemed to have restored his state at the peak, and the aura on his body was different. The long knife came out of its sheath, reflecting a bright light, even though it had not been swung out, the big tree on one side had been cut open. Roger quickly placed his eyes on Jiāng Liú in front of him, and he quickened his pace. At the same time, Jiāng Liú, who was fighting Whitebeard, naturally noticed Roger's state, and his eyes became serious. He naturally sensed that the opponent's aura was completely different from before. Boom! After a heavy encounter with Whitebeard, Jiāng Liú flew back and retreated. The two of them temporarily stopped fighting, and both looked not far away, stepping from the woods, the imposing Roger. It looks like it's going to be 1-on-2. Jiāng Liú murmured. At this moment, his eyes became extremely sharp. His whole cards were originally intended to be used at the last moment of the fight in desperation. However, at this time, facing the two strongest people in the world, how could he hide anything? Even with full firepower, in this battle, whoever wins will be unpredictable. Whitebeard Edward Newgate, the future One Piece Roger, the two will unite at this moment and fight him. The marine hero Garp is being dragged by Golden Lion Shiki at this time. But there is no doubt that Shiki's state looks a little embarrassed. Going alone, he can only stand up to Garp. Roger quickly came to Jiāng Liú, and he nodded to Whitebeard. Thank you, Newgate, the time you have delayed may rewrite future history. Whitebeard's face sank, and he didn't respond. He still stared at Jiāng Liú solemnly. Only those who have fought with the other side can understand how great the pressure that has been spreading over this kid is. The perfect hockey that has reached its peak state, the Paramesha devil fruit that has been awakened, and the world's #1 swordsmanship. Jiāng Liú, who integrates all of these into one, is powerful and beyond everything. Once he releases the power deep in his body, even me, may be no longer his opponent. Whitebeard stared at Jiāng Liú with solemn eyes. Facing the opponent between him and Roger, there is no doubt that in the next battle, the firepower will be fully fired. And they will also see what kind of power the other party has always hidden. Show your strongest strength, Jiāng Liú. Otherwise, in the next battle, you will have a terrible defeat. Roger shouted. Jiāng Liú narrowed his eyes, but did not respond. He drew the long knife from his waist again, and his eyes suddenly changed at this moment, and the extremely black color filled his eyes. A deep, weird breath, creepy, slowly rising from behind it. Asura Ghost Forest Demon, Buddha is at the top. 2 swords. His head slowly lifted, and his eyes became extremely dark, just like the black hole in the center of the stars of Jotien. Quote. Sen Luo ghosts all. Quote. A deep voice came out, and Jiāng Liú's figure suddenly disappeared in front of the two of them. Coming. Roger's pupils condensed, the long knife in his hand clenched tightly, and it swung out in an instant. God avoid. Whitebeard made a buzz from the cloud cut, a shock wave appeared, and then roared and swung his own big knife. In the next second, a black shadow that was pulling suddenly appeared in front of the two of them. The head of the Buddha, the body of an evil spirit, the dark half of the body, just like nothingness, the golden head, kind eyebrows and good eyes, make the heart trembling. The phantom floated out, appearing behind Jiāng Liú. 6 arms came out, each holding a long knife, glowing with golden and black light, shaking the space, making everything rippling. When the two saw this weird virtual image, they were in a trance for a moment, and soon they were shocked. This is what it looks like after practicing kendo to an unimaginable level. After reacting, they hurriedly swung their knives. Soon, the weird and terrifying Lee's imaginary image was picked up, and he slashed it down. Boom. With the first cut, the two of them shook their bodies, the dust underneath them was flying, the ground was torn apart, and the void shuddered. Call slowly let out a sigh, but the expressions of the two of them became more solemn. Because of the second knife, it swung down again. What? Roger and Whitebeard yelled almost at the same time, and swung their long knives again. Boom. The space was distorted, and the knife cut a huge gap between the two behind them. However, this is not over yet. When they exhausted their strength, the third sword suddenly appeared and swept down. This is the sword of hell, and it's hard to guard against. Boom. With a deafening sound, two figures flew out. This is just the beginning of my strongest state. Jiāng Liú raised his head and said slowly, his eyes were pitch black, like a black hole, and... Chapter 209. Advertise here. Boom. The huge sound resounded in everyone's ears. When the morning sun was rising, such a shocking sound made everyone present involuntarily turn around and look at the place where the three of them were fighting. The scene that caught the eye was that everyone's pupils contracted and they were stunned. The space around Jiāng Liú's body began to twist at this moment, and the quicksand was spinning, circling, and collapsing, rolling towards where he was. It seems that at this time, his body is infinitely heavy, and thus has an unimaginable attraction and involvement in the surroundings. And what this force brings is the terrifying oppression and the sense of gravity. Gradually, pitch black cracks appeared around his body, and then these cracks changed rapidly, converging into black spots, permeating around his body, just as quietly suspended there. It looks very peaceful, but it gives people a sense of palpitations and horror in the soul. What it is? What has happened to Jiāng Liú's body? He seems to be terrifying. Many people were solemn, and said in a deep voice, looking at the man standing on the spot with double knives in hand. In the distance, Whitebeard and Roger were slowly standing up, their expressions extremely solemn and solemn. This kind of power has never been seen before. He has developed Devil Fruit's ability to a realm unimaginable by ordinary people. Where is this guy sacred? The two spoke slowly, shocked and inconceivable between their words. Jiāng Liú in front of him seemed to be in a state of change. The black spots were becoming denser. The two knives in his hand were also wrapped in black light, and his eyes were extremely dark. The whole person is like a living black hole. Try your best, Newgate. This guy, I am afraid I will surpass rocks at this moment. If you can't stop him today, no one will be able to stop him in the future. Roger said in a deep voice. The reason why I chose to help you instead of supporting him is that I cannot be sure how he will affect the world. Even if he is my brother, in this war, Whitebeard can only stand on the opposite side of him. Whitebeard took a deep breath and said with a complex expression. They are brothers who have worshipped the handle, but they have embarked on their own paths. Even if they spend nearly a year together day and night, he still can't see through Jiāng Liú, and can't guess what the other party will do. Infinite quality, the sublimation that it brings, is infinite power, and quality is power. When the mass is enough, I stand here alone, it is a black hole, which will pull everything around me. Time, space, light, and matter will all be swallowed in this endless darkness. Jiāng Liú spoke slowly. This is the new trick he developed, based on the awakening of quality fruits, to create the ultimate trick. If the quality of oneself is unlimited, the power of each strike will be unlimited. Similarly, centering on oneself will also unfold a terrible force field. People standing in this field of force, even with hockey resistance, will suffer endless weight pull, as if carrying a huge mountain on their backs at any time, making it difficult to move. People with low strength will be crushed by this weight once they get close to him. The awakening of quality fruits, a grain of sand and a stone, will be no different from a mountain. This is a qualitative change, and it will also be the first appearance of incredible power. I call it. After a pause, Jiāng Liú's eyes were pitch black, and he looked forward. Great Black Mountain Frontier. Roger and Whitebeard looked at each other, and both of them clearly saw the solemnity in each other's eyes. This is called Daheishanzhong's trick. They naturally have never heard of it before, but it is difficult to guess how powerful it is. However, the palpitations from the soul made them feel fear. Yes, even the strength of the two people feels heart palpitations. This is my domain alone. If I want, I can cover the entire Greenland island. Able to force my whole cards. Roger, Newgate, your combination is indeed very good. But this battle is over. Jiāng Liú said slowly. Such a state, such a trick, naturally consumes physical strength and energy is extremely terrible. This is also the reason why he is unwilling to use it. However, facing the teamwork of the two opposing people, if he still pays attention to keeping his hands, he may soon fail. A circle of ripples suddenly radiated, and the dark light stretched out of Jiāng Liú's body at a very fast speed, and then reached 3 kilometers, 6 kilometers, 9 kilometers, and 12 kilometers in a blink of an eye. Covering a large area, even Whitebeard and the crew of the Roger pirates are included. What is this? I feel my heart palpitations, like something, invisibly pressed in my heart. Jiāng Liú, what exactly is he going to do? The crew of the two pirate regiments all had serious eyes and nervousness in their hearts. In the next second, Jiāng Liú suddenly took a step forward. Void trembling, endless brilliance gathered into lightning, blooming within a radius of 12,000 meters, and at this moment, everyone in it felt the weight of horror falling from the sky. A small dust floating in the void touched their body, making them feel a tremor in their whole body, followed by the bending of the waist, and crashed to the ground. I gave the dust, particles, atoms, invisible matter in the air, heavy weight. This is my great Black Mountain Frontier. Jiāng Liú said slowly. In just a moment, all the members of the two pirate regiments within the range lost their combat effectiveness. Too terrifying. The power of Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú is so terrifying. Roger and Whitebeard, will they be his opponents? Even the hero Vice Admiral Garp, his pupils shrank at this moment, and his heart was shocked. He has never seen such a power before, and Jiāng Liú has developed the fruit of quality to an unimaginable level. Are you ready, Roger? Newgate. Taking another step, Jiāng Liú said softly. While he asked, the sand grains along the beach trembled at this moment, and suspended in the void for the next second. These sand grains each have a weight ranging from 1 to 2 to 3 tons. To reduce quality and enhance quality at the same time, this is my fruiting ability. And you, the next thing you have to face is these countless sand attacks. After a pause, Jiāng Liú grinned with a sorrowful smile, and a black light appeared on the double knives. As well as my personal attack. On the opposite side, Roger and Whitebeard's faces were extremely solemn. It has started. 2. Jiāng Liú's figure suddenly moved, and sand particles in the sky flew out like bullets. Chapter 210. Advertise here. Buzzing. The fine sand made a low whistling sound, like a locust pounced forward. The dense and heavy pressure made people look crazy. Shoo. The harsh whistling sound made the pupils of Whitebeard and Roger begin to shrink, and their eyes became serious. The ability to reduce quality and enhance quality at the same time, they can't imagine how powerful Jiāng Liú's body is at this moment. Completely unknown ability, but it can be seen that it is absolutely powerful. Newgate. Roger's voice was low and he squeezed the long knife in his hand. At this moment in the battle, they did not expect it. After Jiāng Liú's full-strength burst of power, they actually needed the two of them to work together to deal with it. This is extremely incredible in the past. But at this moment, it is reality. In an instant, endless grains of sand came with a mighty attack, and in a blink of an eye they came to the front of the two. Whitebeard first let out a low growl, his right fist was clenched, a shock wave condensed, and then his fist blasted towards the void ahead. Boom. The void cracked, and all the sand particles in the sky were all for a while, and then they were scattered and drifted towards the surroundings. When they flew out of this area, they fell to the ground and made a loud shock. Each grain of sand is like Jiāng Liú kid, as he said, with a terrible weight. After this guy's fruit awakens, he has such incredible power. Whitebeard's eyes were solemn and solemn. Of course, the sand has not been cleaned up at this moment, and the next wave is whistling and arriving in front of you. It is conceivable that if you are hit by it, the damage you will suffer will be unimaginable. God avoid. Roger swung his knife at this moment. The pitch-black blade shone sharply, and a breath became extremely domineering at this moment. A powerful chopping wave whizzed out in an instant, and the sand grains in front of them were shaken away in an instant, and flew towards the outside of the field. At the same time, Whitebeard punched again, and a stronger shock wave shook the void. The sand in the sky was swept away and a large area was blown out. At the same time, the grains of sand flying out of the field began to fall, which caused panic among other personnel on both sides who were fighting. Hurry up. The weight of the falling sand, and the impact, is not weaker than that of a meteorite. Don't be affected by the battle of the captains. People ran away, leaving the area covered by the sand in a blink of an eye. Then watched them fall to the ground with a loud bang. Boom. The ground vibrated, and a grain of sand and a stone fell, but what was brought was the crack of the ground above the beach, and a huge pothole appeared. The continuous sound of explosions left people dumbfounded and shocked by the terrifying power of the three captains in the center of the battlefield. A grain of sand can become so terrible in Jiāng Liú's hands. Is this the power that the most powerful person in the world possesses? Someone murmured. They are very clear that the strength shown by the other party has surpassed that of normal human beings, and they are completely able to stand shoulder to shoulder with God. At the center of the battlefield, Roger and Whitebeard teamed up to sweep away the dust in the sky, and their expressions became more solemn. Jiāng Liú was so difficult to deal with that they had never expected. Suddenly, a strong wind swept in. The frightening thing was that even the wind seemed to come with weight, and the skins of the two of them were instantly cut apart. Now, it's not the time for you to be distracted. Jiāng Liú's voice sounded, and the figure fell from the sky, holding a pair of knives, and suddenly swung down. At this moment, his eyes were pitch black, and a pitch black twisted phantom was shining above the long knife, like a black flame. The pupils of the two contracted and quickly responded, while waving the long knife in their hands, and headed away towards the sky. Boom. In an instant, the four knives collided together. The ground, no, the whole Greenland was stunned at this moment, and the sea around the island, the seawater rolled up against it, clashed. It seemed that under this knife, this collision, the entire island was crushed and sunk. The weight of this kid. Whitebeard gritted his teeth and yelled. Knock him out, Newgate. Roger also gritted his teeth and roared loudly. After a breath, the two roared at the same time, broke out with all their strength, and swung their swords again. Stab. Find flowers. In the center where the four knives collided, a dazzling electric light flashed out, and then a violent burst of force erupted. Jiāng Liú's figure was repelled, and he drew nearly a kilometer on the ground. Call. After holding the blow, Roger and Newgate looked at each other, and slowly exhaled, but they both saw the solemnity in each other's eyes. This kid is extremely difficult to deal with. You must give it all. It's like fighting a meteorite, a star. The two of them had serious eyes, and such thoughts flowed in their hearts. Their bodies, at all times, are under pressure, gravity, and mass from the ground. It can be said that after the opponent's ability called Daheishanjong began, their battle with the opponent has already begun. 0. Coming. Suddenly, Roger yelled and rushed out. Almost at the same time, Whitebeard also roared, waved the clouds and strode out, and sprinted. He must not be defeated. With 2-1, this is already the limit he can tolerate for combat and damage to his dignity. Moreover, I still face the kid Jiāng Liú. On the other side, Jiāng Liú also yelled. Roar. The knees were bent, and then the whole person suddenly ejected. He has used his full strength, and if this is the case, he cannot defeat the opponent, then he will usher in a fatal defeat. This battle must be done quickly. The Great Black Mountain Frontier is indeed very powerful, he has not even developed it to the extreme, but the consumption of physical strength and energy is terrible. With his current state, I am afraid it will not last long. The ground trembled, and Jiāng Liú once again completed a fierce collision with the two. Boom. The island trembled again, and countless cracks stretched on the surface, and countless pirates watched this scene in horror. The earth was shaking, cracks appeared in the sky, and even the surrounding sea water rolled up against the sky, becoming extremely restless. This kid. Whitebeard gritted his teeth, and Roger looked grim in the side. The two blocked a knife, but still felt the tremendous pressure. This kid is powerful and unbelievable. 10,000. Chapter 211. Advertise here. Crack wipe. The space is shattering, the airflow is twisting, making a weird hissing sound, like thousands of snakes spitting their cores. The ground under his feet collapsed more severely, and the terrifying weight was pressing down on Roger and Whitebeard fiercely. Crunch. The bones of the two of them uttered a wailing sound. Roar. Whitebeard yelled, slicing clouds in his hand and waving upwards with all his strength. But the long knife pressed by Jiāng Liú remained motionless, like a mountain falling down. Roger's complexion is squalid, his eyes are sharp, and the blue veins on his forehead are violent, and he is always in the stage of full explosion. This time, the two sides did not separate quickly, but were engaged in a head-on contest. Outside of the field, Rayleigh stared at the battle with solemn eyes, and cried in his heart, "You must hold on, Roger. Father, come on." Marco and others were also excited and clenched their fists. The people on the Black Flag side are full of serious faces. Their captain is 1 against 2, which is undoubtedly exciting. However, facing the world's top powerhouses, it is also possible to encounter unspeakable risks in this battle. Quick fight, Jiāng Liú. Letterfield murmured in his heart. He is clear about the state of the other party. In that short attempt, Jiāng Liú broke out with all his strength, and the battle between the two destroyed an island. But there is no doubt that fighting him and teaming up with Roger and Whitebeard are fundamentally different. Garp, just stay here obediently. Boy Jiāng Liú, blocking Roger and Newgate, I don't want him to laugh at my incompetence. Golden Lion Shiki growled. Facing Garp alone, he was under a lot of pressure, but when he saw Jiāng Liú, he naturally couldn't, so he put the pressure of Garp on Jiāng Liú. After all, the two are still allies in the face. You guy, don't you see Jiāng Liú's threat yet? Garp exclaimed in a deep voice. Such a powerful force, with its own power, blocked Roger, Newgate, and Jiāng Liú's strength, and even made him seem to have seen the rocks of the past. And this person, I am afraid, will never make rocks mistakes. In the center of the battlefield, 10 seconds later, Roger and Whitebeard flew out again. The two Kakuzu had blood stains on their mouths, and with the strength of their joint efforts, they both suffered internal injuries in the confrontation with Jiāng Liú. Puff. Whitebeard spit out a mouthful of blood towards the ground, then raised his head, his eyes more fierce. In front of you, I will never admit my failure. Lifting Kong Yunchi up, Whitebeard yelled and rushed up again. Jiāng Liú took a deep breath, and white gas was coming out of his body at this moment. His blood was flowing frantically, and the various energies in his body were running to the limit. Resolve them as soon as possible. Secretly in his heart, his feet stepped on the ground and ran wildly again. He knew very well that in this state, the body at this moment might not last long. How will the future run wild? There was red light in Roger's eyes, and he murmured in his mouth, and his figure also rushed up closely following Whitebeard. The third collision between the two sides began in an instant. The violent air flow twisted to the sides, and the deafening sound directly shook the few animals on the island to the ground. But this time, Jiāng Liú seemed to be half crazy. After a blow, he quickly retreated, and then ejected again, slashing with a knife. His attacking pace is amazing, and the power of a single knife is heavier than a single knife. The white gas emerging from the whole body gradually changed towards the blood mist. Let's fight it out, Whitebeard, Roger. Jiāng Liú yelled, his eyes darkened. Suddenly, the pressure faced by Roger and Whitebeard became even greater, as if they were carrying a mountain on their backs, their movements became slower. Let this battle determine who the future king belongs to. The black air current rolled upwards, enclosing Jiāng Liú, and the two people who were close to him became tight and difficult to move. The final battle. Roger's eyes sharpened. It is impossible for you to look down upon you, lousy as Whitebeard. Whitebeard yelled. The attacks of the three strongest players were all revealed in the next second. Boom 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 boom. The continuous collision spread to the ears of everyone present, and their battles were suspended. Who will win? Everyone is waiting for the result. However, the ensuing battle was still longer than they expected. Such high-frequency fighting continued until dusk in the afternoon. The setting sun is bloody, Greenland has been devastated, cracks are everywhere, and strong winds are raging over the island. The sky of this island has become completely different. The airflow, pressure, thunder and lightning, and chaos are mixed together, giving people a feeling of depression and dullness. It seems that even the dark clouds in the sky have a huge weight. Puff puff. The battle between the three was still going on. There was blood spurting everywhere on and around Roger and Whitebeard's robes. But their fighting will is so high and amazing, at this moment, the eyes of both of them are releasing light. On the opposite side, Jiāng Liú was in a trance, completely turned into a black shadow, a black light, twisted and flickered, appeared in front of their eyes, constantly colliding with them. The opponent's body and the corners of his mouth were also full of blood. This is a bloody battle. All three of them had some scars on their bodies. The wind was roaring, the space turned into chaos, and their battle seemed to never stop, and it shook everyone's ears. Puff. Another series of blood bloomed from the bodies of the three of them and spilled on the ground, but these slight scars did not seem to have any effect on their battle. How long can I support? My body seems to have long been unable to hold it. But why am I still fighting? Jiāng Liú's body is like a machine, instinctively, sending out his own attacks. He has already reached the limit, and the Great Black Mountains has already exceeded the time his body can support. But at this time, his spirit and will are extremely clear, and the fluctuation in his mind has reached an unimaginable peak. Is it my desire to win? Do not. At this point, how can you stop here just because your body is broken? I must fight. I must continue to fight. I want to win this battle. The black light in his eyes is even worse. The will in Jiāng Liú's body, at this moment, blooms like light, sublimating and transforming. I want to be the king of the sea. His brain roared silently. Chapter 212. Whether it is Jiāng Liú, Whitebeard, Roger, they have already reached the limit of being a human being at this moment. Blood was thrown, sweat fell, and drifted on the ground. The attack of the three of them did not slow down at all. They attacked each other time and time again, and it could be seen that the light in their eyes had been shining to the extreme. No one wants to fall first in this battle, even if the body is at its limit, but the will is roaring and roaring. War, war, war. Jiāng Liú's heart was roaring, the dark flame on his body seemed to be swallowing everything, spreading in the surrounding area, the quality was heavier. Crunch. In his ears, he could even clearly hear the sound of bone rubbing from the two strongest bodies, Whitebeard and Roger, opposite him. There is no doubt that the other party is also under terrible pressure. Victory against him, Roger. Whitebeard yelled. Use our combined skills. Roger shouted at the same time. The two were united and fought with Jiāng Liú for so long, and naturally they had formed a tacit understanding. Even though they had never cooperated and fought before, they could initially match up. The last blow. Roger, this kid has already reached his limit, and he is supporting it all by his will. The clump of clouds in Whitebeard's hands lifted up, and a shock wave quickly expanded. I feel it, he won't be able to support it for long, let this blow end him. Newgate. Roger said solemnly. Good, Roger. Whitebeard took a deep breath, his eyes solemn. No one would have thought that Jiāng Liú would be so difficult. The young man in front of him, as he said when he first boarded the ship, rushed to the world's number one. Moreover, in this battle, it has truly demonstrated near invincible combat power. You are really number one in the world, Jiāng Liú. Sighing softly, Whitebeard waved his own cloud cut. The long knife in Roger's hand also became pitch black, bursting out with a sharp light, and it flicked out. The two hockey moves and sword intent, at this moment, between the swings, perfectly fit a certain weird frequency, and then combined together. Call out. The light blooms, the endless terror, and the domineering aura surging out at this moment, and a terrifying oppressive wind is formed in the blink of an eye, sweeping toward the front. Jiāng Liú's black hair was rolling, and where this strange wind touched, the domain was rapidly failing, and Devil Fruit's ability faded. His pupils contracted and he felt the danger, the long knife in his hand suddenly clenched at this moment, and black light burst out. Has the final blow. Just use my strongest blow to end this battle. Look at whether man will conquer the sky, or whether destiny cannot be violated after all. Mumbling, Jiāng Liú's body black light suddenly converged, and all concentrated on the two knives. The pitch-black Uzumaki began to circle at this moment, surrounding the black blade. Trance and no thoughts, sorrow and endless dark autumn. Two swords. The chanting sounded, Jiāng Liú's body suddenly rushed out, and in a blink of an eye he was in front of Roger and Whitebeard. The two held their long swords high and swung them down together. The ground cracked, the sky cracked, and the space cracked. Shenzhen. The roar shook the sky, accompanied by the force of terror, it whistled down in an instant, covering Jiāng Liú. The combined skills of the world's top two strongest men can imagine how terrifying the power contained therein. In response to this notice, Jiāng Liú also waved his double knives, his eyes sharpened to the extreme. Black Buddha Cave Ghost. Wow. Suddenly, there was a neighing sound in the void, like a ghost and a god screaming. Behind Jiāng Liú, a dark Buddha appeared, staring at his eyes, countless hands appeared, and countless long knives were held in his hands. As he swung his two swords, the long sword in Black Buddha's hand also swung down. All eyes stared out at this moment, staring at the center of the battlefield. This blow will determine the outcome. Boom. The moment the two sides collided, a terrible explosion sounded, followed by endless brilliance. Greenland shook violently, and numerous cracks appeared, the surrounding sea rolled up, and the sea washed up into the sky. In a trance, no one can hear any sound, and apart from the light, they can't see any scene. Everything is silent. After a long time, the light dissipated. What everyone faces is a terrifying, huge wind and impact. In the blink of an eye, a pirate was swept by the strong wind and flew towards the distance until it fell into the sea. Boom 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 boom. With light as the center, terrible waves whizzed towards the distant sea. Everyone soon saw that the sea was not calm at this moment. The waves rolled up 100 meters high, soared quickly, and then screamed away in the distance. The confrontation between the three caused a huge tsunami. After a while, everything calmed down, revealing three people on the battlefield. Puff, puff. First it was Roger, then Whitebeard. Both of them spewed a mouthful of blood. Their faces were so pale, they stood swaying, they were about to be unable to hold on. Tuck. Whitebeard used all his strength to cut Kong Yun to the ground, supporting himself to prevent him from falling. Roger bends down and supports himself with a long knife. The two raised their heads and looked at Jiāng Liú, who was standing 10 meters away, with broken clothes and blood stains on his face. Jiāng Liú, who was also standing there, had very dignified eyes. Newgate, Whitebeard. A low voice sounded. Jiāng Liú grasped the two knives inserted on the ground, the dark light flashed again, and he slowly stood up. It seems that I won. These words made Roger and Whitebeard look hard to look at. The people around, the sound of exclamation has been heard. It is clear that the victorious side of this battle has come out. Can you still move? Jiāng Liú spoke again and stepped forward. With every step, his footprints are deeply imprinted on the ground. After 3 steps, 2 knives were slowly raised, one left and the other placed in front of Roger and Whitebeard. Jiāng Liú. Newgate looked complicated and sighed softly. Ha 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 ha. Fought dignifiedly, and defeated dignifiedly. Jiāng Liú, I admit that you are powerful. Roger laughed. It can be said that this is the first time in his life that he has acknowledged the strength of others. Then too, goodbye, Jiāng Liú said softly. With a twist of his wrist, the long knife swung out. Amidst everyone's exclamations, Roger and Whitebeard slowly fell to the ground. Turning around, Jiāng Liú looked at the boiling sea at the moment with a deep complexion. After all, better than this sky. Chapter 213. Advertise here. The wind is whizzing, the sea is boiling, the sky is split into 2 halves, and the dark clouds are chaotic, as if broken by a big hand. Greenland trembled and the cracks were still growing. Jiāng Liú's robe was broken, and there were many wounds on his body. He lowered his head and glanced at Roger and Whitebeard, who had passed out in a coma. In this peak battle, the ultimate winner is still him. Wow. The wind blew his tattered robe. Jiāng Liú squinted slightly, feeling the calm after the victory. His body has already reached its limit, his bones are creaking, and his muscles are even weaker. At this time, he can stand there without even moving. This victory was won only because it was more powerful than the other two. In such a battle, one more knife is enough. Roger surpassed the limit of his body and fought with all his strength. The lifespan that was not long was a consumption. No one knew how long he could live. Jiāng Liú didn't kill the other party either. For a person whose life is dying, he doesn't need to attack. Whitebeard Newgate was naturally even less likely to kill. After all, the two had drank a cup of wine and had a brotherhood, but the choice of each other in this battle really made them a little annoyed. Victory is enough to show that oneself has overcome destiny and won this era. When the sea breeze came, Jiāng Liú squinted slightly and stood motionless. The whole war in Greenland also ended at this moment. People from all sides gathered together and looked at each other cautiously. Jahahaha, Garp, they have already decided the winner, and we don't need to fight anymore. Jiāng Liú's victory, this is really shocking news to the world. Golden Lion Shiki laughed. Garp looked serious, snorted coldly, and stepped back to stand with the remaining marine. The Roger pirate group, the Whitebeard pirate group, everyone was gathering. Soon in the field, several camps were separated and they looked at each other. There is no need to continue, Rayleigh, this war has already decided the outcome. Letterfield retreated and shouted in a deep voice. I have the same intention. Rayleigh drew back, turned his head and glanced at the place where Roger had fallen, with a hint of concern and tension in his eyes. Marco and others were even less interested in fighting the Black Flag group. Their father fell, which caused countless people to exclaim and worry. Enel turned into thunder and lightning, and came to Jiāng Liú first in the blink of an eye. He first glanced at the fallen Roger and Whitebeard, and then at his captain. Captain, are you okay? Jiāng Liú smiled slightly, still facing the sea. Don't worry, it's just an overloaded fight, and now I can't move. Enel was taken aback for a moment, then stepped forward. I'll help you. Leave me behind, Jiāng Liú said solemnly. In his current state, he can't even move a bit, and simply supporting him can't change the status quo. The first second, when he was fully engaged in the battle, he didn't feel much, but after this breath was relieved, the pain and pressure in his body surged like a mountain, making him a little dark in front of his eyes. It is good. Enel moved quickly. When Jiāng Liú was moved back, the corner of the latter's mouth twitched, and a touch of pain emerged. Just a slight touch, the pain caused by it is heart-piercing. Everyone, since the battle has been decided, then we have the chance to see you another day. Letterfield stood there and said loudly. Roger pirates, Whitebeard pirates, Kaido pirates are all quiet, no one speaks, and no one opposes. It seems that everyone agrees with me. Letterfield smiled faintly. Later, he saw an electric arc flashing in front of him, and Enel came to him with Jiāng Liú on his back. Good job, Enel. Waldo gave a compliment. The latter gave a thumbs up and grinned. Let's go. Letterfield nodded and turned around immediately. They moved quickly, and in a blink of an eye they were on the Black Pearl, followed by the flying pirates, which also began to retreat. Golden Lion Shiki was injured, his nose was blue and his face was swollen. After boarding the ship, his eyes kept flickering and he glanced at the Black Pearl next to him. Captain. Someone behind the cadre spoke in a low voice, and his eyes also scanned the boat not far away. Their people consume a lot. Following what you ordered before, our people have retained their physical strength. Golden Lion Shiki grinned when he heard the words. Don't act rashly, just follow my instructions at any time. Yes. The cadre nodded, then stepped back. On Greenland, the Roger pirates and the Whitebeard pirates rushed towards the place where their captain fell. Quote. Roger. Quote. Father. Soon, the cry sounded, and then there was a voice of relief. That guy didn't kill him at the last minute. However, the captain was seriously injured and must be dealt with as soon as possible. The people on the two groups of boats quickly picked up their captains, rushed into their respective boats, and then began to evacuate. Above the world, starting today, a new storm will be set off. On the Jackson, Rayleigh sighed. The failure of Roger and Whitebeard's cooperation is unimaginable. It also indicates that a king like Rox will once again appear on the sea. Jiāng Liú will be unstoppable to the top and become the king. Others are worried about Roger's injury, but Rayleigh seems to have seen the future in the near future. At the same time, aboard the Moby Dick, even Daddy, he has defeated. Can anyone stop him in this world? Marco murmured. White Li Hao Beard Edward Newgate, the invincible father in his eyes, was lying in the middle of the deck, eyes closed, motionless. The wound on his body is even more shocking. He had never seen the mighty Whitebeard suffered such an injury. On the other side, Jiāng Liú sat on the boat with Nai Chin's dignified face, doing various treatments for him. The injury was very serious, not only the external skin trauma, but also multiple shock injuries inside the body. 8 of the ribs are broken, and the internal organs are also damaged to varying degrees. She spoke quickly, and the complexions of the people around her changed. Can't die. Jiāng Liú smiled faintly when he heard the words. His superhuman physique can naturally include such injuries and put it on ordinary people. This injury has already died thousands of times. Nai Chin looked at Jiāng Liú with awe in awe, as expected of the captain. Chapter 214. Advertise here. But even if Jiāng Liú's physique is strong, Nai Chin's treatment is still cautious, and she must ensure that these traumas will not leave her captain secretly injured. Everyone kept chatting with Jiāng Liú. Enel Leonard and others talked about the thrills and excitement of the battle just now, while others admired the strength of the captain. Ha 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 ha. Jiāng Liú laughed, and it seemed that the injury did not affect him much. However, as he spoke, Jiāng Liú's expression gradually turned into a trance, and then slowly closed his eyes and snored. He was so tired that he fell asleep without knowing it. Let the captain have a good rest, don't make noise. Nakan said sternly. She still needs to continue treatment for the other party. Internal injuries in the body and external injuries on the body require time to maintain. Jiāng Liú was snoring, showing fatigue on his face. Fighting with the world's top 2 powerhouses is of course very tired, beyond imagination. Even he couldn't hold on to such exhaustion, and fell asleep when talking with everyone. On the Black Pearl, it became quiet. Only the sea breeze came, and the hunting sound of the sails swelling and shaking. But after a while, one after another snoring sounded. Not only Jiāng Liú is tired, but the people involved in this battle have reached their limit. The enemies they face are all top in the world, and the pressure will naturally be great. About half an hour later, Letterfield sat on the bow, embracing the umbrella sword and looking forward. A crew member quietly ran over and spoke in a low voice with nervous expression. The flying pirates have been following us. There seems to be something wrong with the atmosphere. Letterfield squinted, then said, let the sober brothers stay vigilant. The crew's heart shuddered and nodded heavily. He observed the flying pirate group for a period of time, and only after he had made a judgment in his heart would he come to report the news. The deputy captain said the same, obviously seeing something in the same way. At the same time, the flying pirates were on board. What's the situation with Black Flag now? Golden Lion Shiki asked aloud. He embraced his hands, his blonde hair fluttered, and his eyes showed a sharp light. The spirit and spirit were completely different from when he was fighting against Garp, and his state has not been reduced in the slightest. Obviously, in the recent war, he retained his strength. It's quiet, most of the crew have already fallen asleep. I want to come. After such a fierce battle, they should be very tired. The cadre behind put down the telescope and said with a smile. Observe for a while, don't worry. Fighting against powerful men like Roger and Whitebeard, there is no doubt that their captain, my dear ally, Shimotsuki, has already reached the limit. Golden Lion Shiki said with a smile. In that battle, Jiāng Liú's amazing strength showed even fear in his heart. If the opponent gave him 100,000 courage at his peak, he would never choose to be an enemy. This man is terrible. With one enemy and two, they all won the victory and won upright. Now, it is the opponent, and also when the entire black flag is at its weakest. However, you must not act too hastily, you must determine whether the other party is deliberately disguising or is really weak. Pirates, they are all insidious and cunning. Especially Jiāng Liú. In this respect, Golden Lion Shiki never thinks that the other party is weaker than himself. At the same time, the whole world began to boil. The war in Greenland began to spread rapidly and spread throughout the sea. What? Roger pirates, Whitebeard pirates, Black Flag pirates, Flying pirates, Kaido pirates, there is a big battle. Kaido is out first. Is it so weak? Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú defeated both Roger and Whitebeard with one opponent. Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, the world's most powerful man. Just kidding, who can accept such a thing suddenly? Above the sea, many pirates stared wide-eyed and couldn't believe it. But as time passed and the news was confirmed, many people were shocked. In Greenland, Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú defeated the world's top powerhouses, Roger and Edward Newgate, with one enemy and two. This is undoubtedly an announcement to the world that he reached the top of the world and became the strongest man in the world. Naval Headquarters. Jiāng Liú won the crown of the world's strongest man, but the significance of this war is more than that. The strongest man in the world. He defeated Roger and Whitebeard. Then, on this sea, there are pirates. Can he stop him from becoming a king? Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, it is this era, Marine's greatest enemy, the greatest threat in the world. Sora looked solemn and said in a deep voice. He clenched his fist tightly, and punched the desktop in front of him into a deep pit. From this it can be seen how great his inner shock was after hearing the news. We, Marine, must prepare in advance for the new situation that may usher in. His eyes sharpened, Kong shouted loudly. It is conceivable that for a long period of time in the future, the main enemy of Marine will be Jiāng Liú. If he is allowed to complete the unification of the sea and become the king of the sea, after hundreds of years, no one has completed the voyage. The impact on the world will be unimaginable. Let Garp go back to the headquarters immediately, he has already warned him not to act without authorization. I thought of uniting with the pirates. I really want to open his head and see what he is thinking. Sora said angrily. The major in the office was silent, afraid to interrupt a word. The Holy Land Mariajoy, in the splendid palace. This battle laid the foundation for Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú to become a king. He already has the qualifications of a king. If you leave it alone, let him continue, I am afraid it is already a certain trend to become the One Piece. According to the intelligence personnel, this guy has been looking for the red historical text, which is the trace of the road sign text, and now he has some information. As for a few dollars, it's still unclear. As with Roger, there are people under his command who can interpret historical texts. The low, old voice spoke slowly, accompanied by heavy majesty. We must stop him. Let him reach Raftel and become the king of the sea. This is. Taking a deep breath, the old man's eyes were solemn and severe. Something that must not be recognized. Chapter 215. Advertise here. In the splendid and magnificent palace, it soon fell into silence. The five elders have different postures and their bodies are awe-inspiring, but at this moment, their faces are full of deep dignity and serious expressions. It's time to visit the king of Pangu City. Maybe, for this matter, he will have better suggestions and decisions. After a long while, a voice sounded slowly. The other four elders all shook their bodies, and after a moment of contemplation, they all nodded slightly. In the afternoon of the same day, five elders standing on top of the world with extremely respected status walked towards the depths of Mariajoy, Pangu City. They saw the Supreme King in Pangu City, and after asking for instructions, they walked out solemnly. Afterwards, the five people quickly talked to Naval Headquarters. Naval Headquarters, in an empty office. Looking at the worm who hung up the phone, with a solemn expression revealing the weirdness, Sengoku asked curiously, as the world government? Nodded solemnly, and raised his head again yes. But it's not just world government. A hint of doubt appeared on Sengoku's face. It's those five old guys. They talked to me personally and asked me to immediately raise the bounty of Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú and the bounty of the members of the Black Flag pirates under his command. After a pause, Kong shook his head and sighed softly. It's some very impressive and terrifying numbers. Sengoku was taken aback, then his expression became serious. Increasing the amount of reward is not a trivial matter for big pirates like Jiāng Liú. This represents the importance and fear of the world government. The higher the bounty, the greater the threat this person poses to the world government. Being able to let the five old guys talk in person and issue the reward amount, it can be seen that the Haichi gang has made the high-level people in the world very dignified. At the same time, the World War I in Greenland spread rapidly around the world. Such a huge event, as soon as the newspapers in various places get the information, they will rush to print it and then distribute it. The city of seven waters. Even Roger and Whitebeard were defeated by him. With a solemn expression on his face, he sighed and said while holding the newspaper that had just been distributed all over the street. He had contact with the Black Flag group and Roger's group, and he built different pirate ships for each of them. He believes that both have the hope of becoming a great pirate, a great man of a generation. Unexpectedly, on this day, the two gangs of pirates fought against each other. Roger, lost to Jiāng Liú. This is undoubtedly great news. I hope they are all intact. With a light sigh, Tom was lost in thought. To him, the two gangs of pirates, whichever they make, is a huge loss and big news. East Blue, Shimotsuki Village. A big event, the Battle of Greenland. Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú reached the top of the world and defeated Roger and Whitebeard. Outside Ishin Gymnasium, shouts came. Closing his eyes cross-legged, Koshiro's eyes opened suddenly while he was practicing, and then he walked out of the door. Come on, a newspaper. He greeted the newspaper seller, and after paying the money, he flattened the newspaper and looked at it carefully. The Battle of Greenland immediately caught my eye. Although the details of the newspaper were not clear, it roughly described the situation of the battle. Kaido pirates, Black Flag pirates, Flying pirates, Marine hero Garp, Roger pirates, Whitebeard pirates. It's really a big dogfight. Koshiro sighed softly. His glasses flickered, and he stared at the newspaper for a long while. In such a chaotic and complicated situation, Jiāng Liú defeated Roger and Whitebeard in one fell swoop. You can imagine what a spectacular scene. Hundreds of birds vie for success, showing the true qualities of a hero. Wanokuni, there is such a great person. Koshiro admired again. Slowly raising his head, looking into the distance, the slightest light flashed on the glasses. I just don't know whether his existence will have any impact on Wanokuni. Will the country that has been closed for a long time face the chaotic world outside because of the impact of the times? In history, countless Wanokuni people have worked hard for this purpose, but they all ended in failure. It can be said that seeing the founding of Wanokuni is the dream of many ancestors and contemporary heroes, and it is also the yearning and hope of countless people. Nowadays, Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, who is famous all over the world, possesses great power and terrible power, and he undoubtedly possesses this ability. The King of the Sea. Find flowers. If it goes well, I am afraid it will already belong to you. Finally, Koshiro embraced his hands and smiled and looked into the distance. Dressrosa. King Liku sat on the throne, holding the newspaper in his hand, with a touch of shock in his eyes. The newspaper has a large section of text describing the people involved in Greenland, the relevant background and details of the forces. Among them, Cyrus. This kid, following the Black Flag, has become famous all over the world. Sighing, King Liku grinned from the corner of his mouth. From the first glance he saw the other party, he admired it very much, thinking that Cyrus must have a good future in the future. Although the opponent lost to the captain of the Black Flag in a gambling battle, he became a pirate. I have seen a wider sky, so I grow wings and learn to fly. Looking towards the sky, Liku Wang murmured. He was really happy for what the other party looked like now. When the world was a black flag, it was a shocking moment for Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú. At this moment, above the second half of the Grand Line, the two huge fleets are getting closer and closer. On the Black Pearl, the purring continued, and only a few people were left behind. Other fleets are wrapped around, guarding the people on the flagship. Not far away, the flying pirate group followed closely. Is it all right? Golden Lion Shiki looked ahead and said suddenly. It has been confirmed that Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú was too exhausted due to this battle and passed out in a coma. Most of the other crew members have already rested. After a pause, the cadres behind their eyes turned cold. If we launch a surprise attack now, we will be able to paralyze the opponent's fleet in an instant. And, at this moment, it is the best time to destroy Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú and the other members on board. Golden Lion Shiki grinned and laughed. Jahahaha. So what are you waiting for? His figure floated, his blonde hair flying. Just let the Black Flagship team fall here. Whitebeard who has no fighting spirit, and Roger who is exhausted. How can I stop my path to becoming a king? The Golden Lion Shiki's voice suddenly became low. Hands. 1. Chapter 216. Hoo. The wind above the sea suddenly became stronger, the sails on the ship trembled instantly, and there were layers of ripples on the sea. Suddenly, boom 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 boom. A series of roars sounded, and the people of the Black Flagship team shook all over and turned their heads abruptly. Shoo. Hoo. As I could see, a series of shells roared in, which immediately caused the pupils of the captains of each ship to shrink, and quickly roared. Attention everyone, immediately disperse and avoid the shells. Damn it, Golden Lion dared to attack us. Be prepared for battle and never let them break through. One after another loud shouts immediately sounded, the originally neat fleet quickly dispersed, and made a counterattack shortly afterwards. Boom 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 boom. Similarly, a cannon roared and spewed pitch-black cannonballs, pouring toward the opposite side. But even if the Black Flag was prepared, this unexpected attack still caused them to lose more than a dozen pirate ships. The fire was blazing, and the originally calm sea suddenly became lively. On the Black Pearl, the huge roar awakened the sleeping people, causing them to open their eyes suddenly. What happened? What's the matter with this gun sound? Enemy. In a blink of an eye, the cadres wake up, but they have experienced the war, their eyes are sleepy at the moment, and some of them seem to be unable to open their eyes, obviously in a bad condition. Jahahaha. The golden lion's laughter suddenly resounded above the sea. People raised their heads, and soon saw him floating by from a high altitude, landing on the ship of the black flagship team in the blink of an eye. After a breath, the ship floated up and crashed into another ship at a very fast speed. After a short while, the other ship that was hit also floated up and crashed into other ships. In a very short period of time, nearly a dozen pirate ships were all suspended, and the pirates on the ship screamed in panic. Jahahaha. Jiāng Liú, are you tired? Golden Lion laughed and shouted. No one responded to him. More than a dozen pirate boats were suspended in the air, and he was standing on the bow of the ship. It seems that the battle really made you very tired. His voice echoed in the void, and along with more than a dozen pirate ships, they floated quickly towards the place where the Black Pearl was located. Can't let him pass, roared a pirate. On the deck, a dozen figures immediately rushed behind the Golden Lion holding weapons. Golden Lion Shiki's eyes condensed, then suddenly turned around, and the double knives around his waist suddenly came out of her sheath. Choke. With the dazzling light, the dozens of people who rushed up had a pause and stopped there. When the knife light went dark, bloody incisions also appeared on their bodies. Hello, don't draw your sword at me. Golden Lion Shiki sneered. He turned around, with blonde hair dancing on his head, looking down at the dark ship not far ahead, his eyes gradually condensed. It can be clearly seen that Jiāng Liú is still sitting there, his eyes closed tightly, while the other cadres and members are already awake and are staring at him with eyes full of anger. Angry. But this is what a pirate should look like. On this sea, someone who is too naive and believes in others will live a long time away. Golden Lion grinned. After a dozen breaths, the Golden Lion came to the sky above the Black Pearl. Shiki, it seems that your ambition is finally about to explode today. Letterfield stood up slowly and shouted in a deep voice. Heichi is the only one left with bruises and bruises, a guy with a strength of 10 and 3. It's not my opponent. Golden Lion Shiki squinted and smiled. It must be hard to fight against opponents like Rayleigh. Letterfield's expression remained unchanged, but his heart sank. Indeed, as the other party said, playing against a guy like Pluton Rayleigh, let alone the injury on his body, the mere consumption is amazing. And looking at the Golden Lion Shiki in front of him, he actually left a trace of strength in the duel with Garp. What a scheming guy. You can try, Letterfield said in a deep voice. Golden Lion Shiki stared at each other for a while, then grinned suddenly. Of course I will try. If you are buried in this sea today, then the one piece will be me. Letterfield also smiled. Some dreams are only suitable for doing in a dream. One Piece, who owns it? You should be very clear. Golden Lion's pupils contracted and then glanced at Jiāng Liú. Did you say Jiāng Liú? I will personally send him away. But before that, at this point, his eyes slammed, his hands opened, and he waved out. The dozen or so pirate boats behind him screamed down at this moment. Suddenly, the heads of everyone on the Black Pearl were covered with a layer of shadow, and the panic screams from the ship made their pupils shrink and their complexions changed drastically. Deputy Captain, someone yelled. Letterfield had serious eyes, staring at the dozen or so pirate boats roaring down. Obviously, such a blow by Golden Lion put them in a dilemma. If you wield a knife, your own people on the ship will also face this catastrophe. But if it doesn't stop, not only the partners on the ship, but everyone on the Black Pearl, the situation is also not good. What should I do? Letterfield was in trouble. Faced with such a choice, it is also difficult for him to make up his mind. Let me come. Valdo stepped forward, and the pitch-black cannonball in his hand was about to fly out. But at this moment, a roar sounded, and on a huge ship not far away, two huge giants with a length of 100 meters suddenly jumped up. The wind howled, the two giants arrived in front of them at an extremely fast speed, and then stood in front of them, opened their arms, and with their flesh and blood, they blocked the dozens of pirate ships forcibly. Boom. The sea was surging, and the two giants vomited blood on their backs, but their eyes were full of fighting spirit. Deputy Captain, and cadres, go to fight. The giants hate people who betray their friends like this. The roar of the giant shocked everyone, and the fighting spirit in their hearts instantly burned high. Letterfield took a deep breath and looked at the Golden Lion Shiki in the sky, his eyes sharpened. Do you think we can't fight after a big battle? Shiki, you underestimated me. I also underestimated the Black Flag. Chapter 217. Advertise here. Jahahaha. No matter how high the fighting spirit is, it is hard to conceal your weakness after the battle. The Black Flag is hit hard. What do you use to fight against me? Golden Lion Shiki laughed, his head bent slightly, and he looked behind him. Even the number of shells, there is a huge difference between the two sides. Your fleet, I am afraid that even the extra shells can't be taken out at this moment, right? Letterfield's face became colder, and his umbrella sword gripped harder. The fleet in front was indeed caught in a difficult battle. The main force of the flying pirates of the Golden Lion was forcibly tearing a hole and coming towards here. It doesn't take much time to reach them. Then before that, get rid of you first. With cold eyes suddenly, Letterfield bends his knees and jumps up suddenly. In an instant, he was in front of Golden Lion. Jahahaha. Let me see what kind of boldness you have, the well-known deputy captain of the Black Flag, who is called the Lonely Red by the world. The two knives on his waist flashed suddenly, and the golden lion swung his knives out. 18. Jonbo. The void buzzed and slammed, two ripples spread out, and immediately afterwards, his two knives collided with Letterfield's umbrella knives. Hoo. There was a violent wind, and the two eyes collided. Stab. A flash of lightning flashed out, and Golden Lion's eyes were serious, but soon he burst into laughter. The explosive power is amazing, but how long can you hold on? He flew back, and soon swiped again. Letterfield borrowed force in the void and collided with him again. Boom. The shock wave spread, and the gale centered on the two of them, and radiated rapidly toward the surroundings. The sea below rippled and stirred waves. Aha! Letterfield let out a low growl, and his power exploded again. Jahahaha. Golden Lion Shiki laughed constantly, swinging his knife again and again. Boom 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 boom. In the blink of an eye, the two sides changed their positions in the sky and quickly collided. After a while, sweat oozes from Letterfield's forehead. He felt the pressure, and his body had already reached its limit, even his bones were crunching. This guy's physical strength is far from reaching the limit. Damn it, fighting Rayleigh consumed too much of my strength. Letterfield gritted his teeth, his face twisted sternly. After slamming his strength again, his body shook, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. You can't hold it anymore, Letterfield. Fights of this intensity were originally commonplace for you. It can be seen that your body has already reached its limit. An opponent like Rayleigh, it's hard to deal with. Golden Lion Shiki laughed. You talk too much nonsense. Letterfield's face was cold, and he rushed up again. The cadres below, with nervous expressions, watched the battle in the air worriedly. They had never seen the deputy captain, this solemn appearance, and never imagined the cold and serious fighting style of the other party. The war started again, but after the two had only collided 3 times, Letterfield spurted blood again because of such a collision. Deputy captain. Damn it, he consumes too much, let me go. Golden Lion, this guy is really mean. Waldo, Cyrus, Karma and others roared furiously. Sister Nakan, can the captain wake up? Enel and others surrounded Nakan anxiously. The latter looked helpless, she really didn't know how to answer such a question. With Jiāng Liú's injury, he would be replaced by an ordinary person, even if he died on the battlefield, there would be no accidents. Now, just a deep sleep in the past, it is already a blessing in misfortune. Whether he can wake up, no one knows. He is so tired. Nakan could only say this softly, looking at the man sitting there cross-legged, his entire body covered with bandages and his eyes closed, there was a touch of pity in his eyes. How did this man hold up Roger and Whitebeard's cooperation, the tremendous pressure, and finally come to the present? Jahahaha. Letterfield, you can't hold it anymore. Shiki's laughter came at this time. With a bang, the air pressure spread above the sky, and Letterfield was hit hard and hit the deck. Deputy captain. Everyone was shocked and ran over together. Letterfield's face was pale, with blood on the corners of his mouth, looking at the golden lion in the sky, his eyes were angry but helpless. He consumes too much and has already reached the limit. Now, who else can stop me? Golden Lion Shiki was condescending and said with a big smile. He glanced at Jiāng Liú again and laughed louder when he found that the other party was still closing his eyes tightly. Waldo was extremely angry, and he threw a dozen shells into the sky, and the moment they flew out, they rose in the wind. Is it just that? Golden Lion Shiki raised his hands and patted the void ahead. The air fluctuated at this moment, suddenly twisted, and dozens of larger cannonballs exploded in an instant. The dazzling fire light shone in the eyes of everyone, but it made their expressions more solemn. Today, the black flag will sink here. After the flame dissipated, Golden Lion Shiki announced in a deep voice, his eyes became cold. Even if you are an ally, you can still betray without hesitation and go to bury the other party. This is the nature of being a pirate. He slapped both hands and slapped downward suddenly. Lion Majesty, the Imperial Palace. In the buzzing sound, the void above people's heads was shocked at this moment, and a faintly huge lion appeared, roaring and rushing towards the Black Pearl. The depressive, heavy breath instantly enveloped everyone's head, making them look ugly. It's over here, Black Flag. Golden Lion sighed softly and made a declaration of victory. The sea breeze is blowing, his long golden hair is floating, his eyes are pouring down, so that his whole body is bathed in brilliant gold. Suddenly, Golden Lion's expression changed, his eyes quickly shifted, and he stared at a certain figure below. Void was shocked, domineering, stern, majestic and mighty breath pouring out wantonly, and in the blink of an eye, he set his huge lion in the void. Faintly, a blue-black breath enveloped the sky above the Black Pearl. Conqueror's Hockey. Golden Lion Shiki's pupils contracted and 2 words were uttered. Jiāng Liú. I just slept. Are you too arrogant, Shiki? The cold, domineering, low-pitched voice resounded sharply in everyone's ears. Chapter 218. Advertise here. The sea breeze swept, the waves slapped, and an inexplicable breath of terror swept over the entire sea. At this moment, everyone's complexion changed. The cadres of the flying pirate group, the crew had solemn eyes, some even shuddered, feeling a little cold. On the pirate ship of the Black Flag, cheers were heard. On the Black Pearl, Letterfield's cold expression finally relaxed, and he let out a long breath. I thought you couldn't wake up. Cyrus clenched his fists and was extremely excited. The captain is awake. Waldo laughed, and then looked at Golden Lion's gaze, which became gloomy and cold. The air seemed to freeze at this moment, and the Golden Lion Shiki was suspended in the air, his eyes dignified and serious. The opponent he didn't want to face the most was awakened at this moment. Jiāng Liú slowly stood up. The violent and domineering aura became more surging in the blink of an eye, and even the space was distorted at this moment. Such conqueror's hockey. Golden Lion Shiki's heart was shaken. Facing each other with his own eyes, he finally knew why this guy would win the battle with Roger and Whitebeard. Just the courage, spirit, and will are already powerful to an incredible degree. But when you stand alone, how many points are left? Jiāng Liú, Roger, and Whitebeard have all lost to you, and the king will be born between you and me. He breathed in abruptly and roared loudly. When he probed his hands, the void seemed to be held in his hands, becoming dense and heavy, and a larger air lion formed again. Shiki, you overestimated yourself. It's a pity, you don't have the aura and aptitude of a king. Jiāng Liú held his hands on the handle of the knife and said lightly. He stepped out, and in the buzzing sound, a circle of ripples quickly radiated around him, and in the blink of an eye, the entire sea surface was wrapped in it. Golden Lion's complexion changed, and he turned to look. His fleet stopped at this moment. All the ships seemed to be in a quagmire, weighing 1,000 tons, and could no longer move forward. Enemy with me, Shiki, are you really ready? Jiāng Liú stepped onto the bow of the boat, looked up, his eyes were cold and icy. The heavy, profound pressure swept across the sky in an instant and crushed Golden Lion's body, making his heart shocked. Immediately afterwards, there was a series of creaking sounds on the surface of the sea. In the fleet of the flying pirates, there were screams one after another. Ships, like they were crushed by invisible force, began to sink. All the pirates, their bodies have long since fallen, clinging to the boat, unable to move. Even on the flagship of Golden Lion, the cadres are gritting their teeth at this moment, working hard to resist this terrifying gravity. Jiāng Liú, one piece, I will never give up easily. The Golden Lion roared, his figure swooped down suddenly, and he swung down with incomparable power with double knives in his hands. The latter raised his head, and a sharp light burst into his eyes. Conqueror's Haki, who was originally fluttering in the air, suddenly converged at this moment and entangled the two knives at an extremely fast speed. Two swords. Ghost Buddha. The light of the knife was dazzling, the sea buzzed, and the ripples spread. The four knives collided fiercely, and the Golden Lion let out a ferocious roar. How much strength do you have after fighting Roger and Whitebeard? But like Letterfield, he has already done it outside the world. Jiāng Liú's complexion was calm. Conqueror's Haki wrapped around the double knives, suddenly boiled, and then burst out. Boom. Golden Lion Shiki's pupils contracted, and the whole person flew out in an instant. Under the terrifying force, his throat was even more unbearable, and blood spewed out. How is this possible? He is using Conqueror's Haki. Golden Lion has only seen such tricks in Roger's body, but at this moment, Jiāng Liú has also mastered it. What's more frightening is that the other party was obviously seriously injured, but he was still able to show such a terrifying crushing power. What kind of monster is this guy? I, Roger, Newgate, and one more you. This constitutes the colorful and segregated situation of the pirate world in this era. But I have to say, you Golden Lion Shiki, among us, is the most imposing guy. Jiāng Liú held a pair of knives and stood on the bow of the boat, with red light flashing in his eyes. Around him, the radiation would be 20,000 to 30,000 meters, and the silence above the sea, the heavy, depressed breath made everyone feel suffocated. Thinking that when I am weak, I can defeat me and do whatever I want in this era. It's a pity, I'm afraid this will disappoint you. Jiāng Liú's voice floated, Conqueror's Haki spread farther, and his aura became more terrifying. Golden Lion Shiki stabilized his figure, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his eyes flickered. He didn't believe how much power Jiāng Liú had at this moment, but the combat power displayed by the opponent was still as impressive as a mountain. Quote. This is the best opportunity. Quote. I missed today and let him go. From now on, when there is his time, I have to retreat. The Golden Lion Shiki gritted his teeth, his heart was cruel. Missing today, if Jiāng Liú is still alive and the black flag still exists, the other party will never let him go. It will be a disaster for his Golden Lion. He cannot accept such a result. Roar. The Golden Lion roared again, and slapped his hands towards the sea below. Lion Majesty, Imperial Palace empty volume. The void trembled and twisted, and the huge lion appeared, roaring and roaring at Jiāng Liú on the Black Pearl. Li Jiao. The Golden Lion flew up, stepping on the lion's head, holding a pair of knives, dancing with blonde hair, hunting in a robe, and swooping down with the lion. Jiāng Liú, I must win this battle. This is my Shiki residue in this era, the last chance and light spot. With a roar of thunder, the Golden Lion went crazy. Jiāng Liú's complexion was calm, and the two knives were raised and slashed out suddenly. Call out. The two arc-shaped slashes roared out in an instant, and instantly stood on the lion's body, splitting it into two easily. Soon after, he turned around, and the long knife pierced the void. Two swords. The light of the knife became brighter, and a circle of ripples shook out. The golden lion roared and reached Jiāng Liú's head, swinging both knives down. Lion funeral song. The deep voice resounded across the sea. In the next second, the sword light shot and spread out. Chapter 219. Advertise here. The air waves spread out in a moment, and a gale swept across the sea. The place where the long knife collided flashed golden lightning, and the golden lion roared constantly. His face was crazy and hideous. It's over. Shiki. Jiāng Liú spit out lightly. If you retreat at this moment, I can spare you a dog's life and let you live humbly for the rest of the time. Tick. There was a clear sound of water droplets, and a little plum-like bloodline was stained on the bow of the boat. Fine sweat leaked from the forehead of golden lion Shiki. His chest was cut open by a slash, and blood was flowing out quickly. He was seriously injured by this collision in the blink of an eye. Fighting for strength, he was not Jiāng Liú's opponent at all. There seemed to be a huge gap between the two sides. Listening to the other party's words, Golden Lion Shiki shouted with a grim expression. How is this possible? How is it possible to retreat at this moment? He retreated, as if he was about to attack again, but his body shook suddenly, and more blood fell. Jiāng Liú looked calm, holding a pair of knives and waiting for the opponent to attack again. But at this moment, Golden Lion suddenly turned around, clutching the wound on his body, and flew away quickly. This time, I lost to you, Jiāng Liú. I will watch you ascend the throne. After leaving 2 sentences, Golden Lion left. Jiāng Liú didn't pursue it either. He took a long sigh of relief and removed all the momentum from his body. Then he jumped off the bow, closed his eyes, and fell asleep again. Golden Lion, who was far away from the Black Pearl, turned his head and saw Jiāng Liú who was asleep, his eyes condensed, but he did not turn back again, but flew away at the fastest speed. Everyone says Shiki is cunning and sinister, but everyone knows that Jiāng Liú is even more sinister and calculating. The Feikong pirates group evacuated, and the people of the Black Flag breathed a sigh of relief, and then began to jump in excitement. The strong Captain Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú made them excited and admired again. At the most critical moment, the captain will always stand up and lead them to overcome all difficulties. After this difficult time, it is a certainty that the Black Flag will become the king of the pirates in the future. Put him back to the bedroom. This time I am afraid that no matter how noisy it is outside, he won't wake up again. After Nakan checked Jiāng Liú's situation, she said with a smile. There is nothing serious about the body, just excessive physical exertion. As long as you take a good rest, you will recover. After listening, everyone quickly picked up Jiāng Liú, and then sent him to his bedroom. Listening to the snoring sound, all smiles appeared on their faces. This guy, I'm afraid I'm exhausted this time. But he is really stronger. I really want to know, what does our captain want to do when he wakes up? The crew began to discuss one after another, and the atmosphere on the ship was very lively. The Black Flagship team set sail again, and this time there was nothing unsuccessful on the road, and they soon arrived at Jalo Island. This time the incident, but above the world, quickly fermented. On the way back, did Shiki launch a surprise attack on the Black Flag? It really fits his style. 7 days later, on the Jackson, Roger ate meat, drank wine, and laughed. He has a bandage on his body, but he seems to be in good condition. If the two of them are still working together, I really dare not think about the position of One Piece. But, Jiāng Liú, Roger's eyes suddenly sharpened, and he said with a faint smile. I'm not the kind of person who gives up easily. After a pause, he drank the drink in his glass in one gulp. Next, we will arrive at the last island sooner than any of us. Compared to you, I am more anxious. After all, my life is racing against me. I must run past him. Not far away, Shanks and Buggy were eating food, but they looked worried. When they were in the corner this morning, they saw the captain vomiting blood into the sea. Such a state is definitely not beautiful. Captain, how long can you hold on? Since you haven't given up yet, how can we let go earlier than you? Rayleigh said with a smile. The other cadres all laughed, and the atmosphere on the ship was not low, but rather lively. Roger, we must beat that kid Jiāng Liú. Kazuki Oden said loudly. The Moby Dick. Goo la 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 la. Laughing, Whitebeard's blonde hair looked exceptionally dazzling in the sun. Jiāng Liú, this kid is really unexpected. He defeated me and Roger. In the world, I am afraid that few people can be his opponents. Marco was helpless. He didn't understand the decision of the old man in this battle. His brother Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú did not choose, but chose Roger. Speaking of which, I don't know if we meet again next time, that kid will recognize me as a big brother. When he spoke again, there was a touch of melancholy in Whitebeard's words. After this battle, the relationship between the two will obviously become somewhat delicate and complicated. At the same time, on Karo Island, Jiāng Liú was eating meat and drinking wine. In front of him, various cadres were also toasting and shouting loudly. He just woke up this morning. He slept for 7 days during this sleep. When he woke up, all the wounds all over his body were crusted. The energy of the whole body is even more surging, as if it can't be used up, except for hunger. He feels that everything is incomparably beautiful. Let go of eating and drinking. Celebrate. This is a celebration, a banquet, to celebrate our victory in Greenland. Jiāng Liú said loudly and vaguely. When we are full, we should move. Look for the text of history, and head to the last island. Become one piece. The cadres all laughed and raised their cups to celebrate together. World news, the aftermath of Greenland's victory will not end soon. In the following time, many pirates chose to join the Black Flag Pirates. The Black restricted area has become more prosperous and stronger. The number of Black Flag ships has exceeded 150 in a short period of time. 3 days later, the Black Pearl departed, heading for an itinerary that no one knew. Wanokuni, isn't this the captain's hometown? Our trip is going to the country of the samurai. Then, Captain, do you want to stop for a while? Cyrus and others said in surprise. Business matters, we will not stay on this trip. Jiāng Liú said with a smile. Then, when he turned to look at Tianyu, the latter was at a loss and looked very nervous. Chapter 220. Ashi. Jiāng Liú yelled with a smile. The latter's face was tense, he was at a loss, pinched the corner of his clothes, and responded with a trembling voice. Jiāng Liú, me. I know you have been thinking about coming here, next, go check it out. Jiāng Liú embraced him, said softly. This girl, from the first time they met, asked to take her to Wanokuni by herself, but at that time, he had just gone to sea, how could he realize each other's dreams? But this time, just returning to Wanokuni, the dream that the other party had been pursuing was also fulfilled. I don't know why, I was suddenly a little scared. Tianyu, she whispered. You are so close to the hometown, you are like this now, don't be afraid. Jiāng Liú comforted. The latter nodded lightly and leaned his little head in Jiāng Liú's arms, but the worry on his face did not go away. Tension, anticipation, and fear can be seen on Tianyushi's face. Jiāng Liú shook his head helplessly. He had no choice but to let it play. Fortunately, there is still some time before Wanokuni. Time continued to pass, and in a blink of an eye, the Black Pearl had sailed to the island where the two met. When Karma saw it, he laughed. Back then, I met the captain and Sister Shi, there. Sister Shi was almost sold by me at that time. When he saw Tianyu's fierce expression, Karma shivered. Of course, I have realized my mistake, hehehehe. Thinking that Tianyu was not strong back then, she was caught by her, but now, the opponent's strength has increased extremely fast, and he is no longer an opponent of this delicate-looking woman. Everyone looked at Wanokuni with interest. This is the hometown of the captain and they are naturally very interested. Everything is ready, the next voyage won't be too smooth. Frankie, Ace Bagu, turn on the momentum, we have to go upstream from the big waterfall in front of us. Jiāng Liú exclaimed. Suddenly, everyone on the ship moved. Wanokuni is a special island. There is no open sea coast. It is surrounded by cliffs and waterfalls. There are only 2 roads for foreign ships to enter here. One is to enter from a hidden passage under the waterfall, but this road is absolutely impossible to enter without Wanokuni's permission. The other one is upstream from the cliff waterfall, this road is extremely dangerous. In history, countless ships have been planted here. At this moment, Jiāng Liú naturally chose to go upstream from the waterfall. He sneaked away like Odin, which violated the rules set by Wanokuni's successive generals. Well, everyone is ready, there will definitely be some bumps next. Frankie laughed loudly. On both sides of the Black Pearl, wing-like wings were quickly extended. At the same time, Ace Bagu pulled down the gate of the power chamber. Buzzing. In an instant, the entire ship began to vibrate violently, and the propellers quickly turned, making a low roar. Everyone was shocked, and the Black Pearl speeded up like a beast, and headed towards the waterfall in front of it fiercely. Go ahead and rush forward. Jiāng Liú laughed. Roar. The Black Pearl responded mediocrely, let out a low growl, and then, facing the huge waterfall that fell down, went upstream, and immediately rushed up. After a while, the water was violent, and the water splashed towards everyone, clashed, and loudly screamed. Jiāng Liú sat cross-legged on the bow of the ship, feeling a little agitated as well. The time spent leaving Wanokuni was long but magnificent, as if experiencing a sound. He has grown a lot outside, and now he wants to come back here again. However, this time he was destined not to stay too long, he would leave after he got the historical text information of the Red Road sign. A piece of the Fishmen Island, and by coincidence, a piece of the crew rubbed from Charlotte Linlin, plus this piece. The only thing left is the piece of Zhou Island. As long as you gather the 4 pieces of road sign text, you will be able to go to the end of the Grand Line. Jiāng Liú's eyes were bright, and he narrowed his eyes and thought. He is only one step away from becoming the One Piece, and likewise, Roger is not far away. Now that the two of them are in terms of strength, the winner is, then the one who has to be compared is who is faster. Soon, the Black Pearl sailed upstream and reached the inland sea of Wanokuni. If you ask others about things like this in the text of the history, I'm afraid it won't be clear. Relatively speaking, the current general, Kazuki Sukiyaki, is probably the clearest. Find flowers. Jiāng Liú thought slowly. After 9 miles, the Black Pearl continued to sail along the inland sea, heading straight to the flower capital. Now, he wants to fight for time. In the afternoon of the same day, Jiāng Liú brought a group of cadres to the capital of the flower city. Seeing the prosperity of Wanokuni and the samurai on the street with a knife on their waist, the crew's eyes widened. What a powerful country. The samurai here is very powerful. It's no wonder that the captain has such a powerful force as soon as he came up. It turns out that he came from such a country. The cadres exclaimed in their hearts. Without delay, the group went straight to the residence of Kazuki's home in the flower capital. 0. Soon after, Kazuki Sukiyaki received the news from the next person. General Sukiyaki, see you Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú. Hearing this name, Kazuki Sukiyaki was slightly stunned. Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú. Are you sure it is the name? Hasn't he left Wanokuni? The person here is Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, who once defeated His Highness Odin. Now he seems to be a pirate, and he also carries a group of other people. The subordinate also said in confusion. Pirate. This kid, what did he do after he was outside? Kazuki Sukiyaki was stunned, then waved his hand. Let him in. He is very familiar with Jiāng Liú, not to mention the huge reputation of the other party in Wanokuni, but the connection between his father and himself is very close. It can be said that Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú is his nephew. Kazuki Sukiyaki poses, and just when his servant prepares the etiquette for receiving guests, Jiāng Liú and a group of people are oncoming him. Just a glance, Kazuki's Sukiyaki dazzled. This kid went out for a trip. After he came back, his aura greatly increased. And his crew. It's not a simple role. With a smile on his face, Jiāng Liú quickly came to the front and bowed to salute. Sukiyaki-sama, come here hastily this time, how disturbing you are. Kazuki Sukiyaki squinted, waved his hand, motioned him to sit down, and glanced at the other people again. You kid, you have changed a lot. 1. Chapter 221. Advertise here. Out of Wanokuni, you will know how big the world is and how small my country is. Jiāng Liú said with a smile, sitting cross-legged, but the maid handed it a drink. The other crew members all took their seats, curiously observing everything here, waiting quietly. They are also observing Kazuki Sukiyaki, who can serve as Wanokuni's general, apparently the other is also a powerful samurai. And from the appearance, everyone rang Kazuki Odin of Roger Pirates. Yes. Kazuki Sukiyaki slightly hesitated and nodded, then asked casually. Odin, is he okay? You went to sea together, why didn't you come back together? Jiāng Liú smiled and said, he joined another pirate group and was not with me. After a pause, he said again. However, it should be a while before he will return to Wanokuni. Kazuki Sukiyaki froze slightly, then nodded, really? Thoughtful, he quickly looked at Jiāng Liú again. So, is there anything important when you suddenly returned to China this time? I can see that you seem to be very different from before. At this time, Frankie and other young people on the side finally couldn't help it, and interrupted and shouted, General Sukiyaki, our captain, is now the world's strongest. He defeated Whitebeard and Roger, he is a big name. Kazuki's Sukiyaki pupils contracted, looking at Jiāng Liú, his eyes gradually became serious. The other party was still smiling and calm. From the outside, he couldn't notice anything special. Your growth surprised me a bit. After a long while, Kazuki Sukiyaki softly sighed. The world's strongest man, with such a title, even if he does not make Wanokuni, he still knows how heavy the weight is. It is conceivable that the young man in front of him holds terrifying power in his body. So, you went back this time, is there anything important? He asked again. I hope I can get news of the red history text from General Sukiyaki. Jiāng Liú smiled and said. Historical text. Kazuki's Sukiyaki was slightly startled, then his eyes narrowed. After going abroad, the experience in the world seems to make you aware of some great information. I want to uncover a certain mystery in this world and take a look at the truth here. I also hope that General Sukiyaki can be accomplished. Jiāng Liú said with a smile. The Kazuki family is its guardian. Now I can hear the people of my country and pursue its existence and its mystery. I am naturally happy for it. You have the courage to pursue your dreams, and I am proud of you too. Kazuki Sukiyaki took a deep breath and smiled on his face. World number 1. The other party is like Ryuma back then, with one's own power, Wanokuni's reputation has been shaken all over the world. It is probably impossible for him or Kazuki Odin to do this. Thank you General Sukiyaki. Jiāng Liú laughed. He was not surprised by this result. For Roger, the Kazuki family were able to fully assist, and there was no reason to be here with him, so he suddenly refused. Your own person will always occupy a more favorable role and position. After the crowd did not mention the historical text, the banquet began. During the dinner, Cyrus, Karma, Waldo and others began to describe the magnificent and spectacular scenery of the outside world. Kazuki's Sukiyaki eyes were in a trance, and his thoughts seemed to be taken away. When he saw Wanokuni, he saw the vast and magnificent sea. When the time is right, I will come back again and try to start a country. In the intersecting moments, Jiāng Liú left such a sentence, making Kazuki Sukiyaki shake all over, and the wine seemed to wake up. That's a big deal. Your courage are indeed something I never possessed. Kazuki Sukiyaki said with a sigh, raised the cup, toasted Jiāng Liú, and drank it in one gulp. This matter is very involved, and then I will search for information from the outside world to determine whether you can make it. The time is right, and I will fully cooperate with you. After a pause, there was a touch of pride in Kazuki Sukiyaki's eyes. Hundreds of years of silence, Wanokuni, should also appear in the eyes of the people of the world. Jiāng Liú nodded and smiled, then thank you General Sukiyaki. Hundreds of years of silence, Wanokuni is not meant to disappear in silence. The ancestors were also committed to founding a country, but many times, thinking of important secrets, they finally gave up. It seems that through drunkenness, Kazuki said a lot about Sukiyaki. Jiāng Liú squinted his eyes and listened. Obviously, Wanokuni is closely related to the blank history 800 years ago. The creation of these stones has an inseparable connection with the Kazuki family. Compared to other people, Wanokuni knows more secrets. Our ancestors left traces of history, but these traces have been contaminated with dust over the long years. Now, maybe it's time to wipe away the dust and let them see the sun again. Kazuki Sukiyaki muttered. He drank, his cheeks flushed, and then expressed his high praise to Jiāng Liú. On this day, everyone was drunk and menacing. It was not until the next day that they woke up and turned around 3 poles in the sun. Now I will take you to the front of that stone. Kazuki Sukiyaki said softly. After a while, everyone followed Kazuki Sukiyaki. When the historical text of the Red Road sign was displayed in front of her eyes, Orbia stepped forward with a solemn expression, and she stroked the historical text with her hand. It records the position of an island. After a while, Orbia said in a deep voice. Kazuki Sukiyaki was a little surprised. He looked at Orbia. Do you know the words on the stones? Orbia nodded. I can interpret this ancient text. It's amazing. I thought this kind of text is only understood by the Kazuki clan. Kazuki Sukiyaki exclaimed. The Kazuki family created these scattered stones in the distant past. Since then, they have also become the guardians of the text of history. Waldo stepped forward, rubbed it, and stored it carefully. Orbia quickly nodded to Jiāng Liú. Thank you General Sukiyaki for your help, then, we won't bother. Jiāng Liú turned to Kazuki Sukiyaki, smiling and thanking. Don't stay for a while. I thought you would stay here for a while. Kazuki Sukiyaki said in surprise. No, we have more important things to do. Jiāng Liú shook his head. Now, all he has to do is to become the One Piece. This is a race against time. Chapter 222. Advertise here. Jiāng Liú and his group left quickly, and in the afternoon of the same day set off again from Wanokuni towards Zhao Island. The names of the 3 islands have already appeared on the chart. Now, there is only the last one left. Looking at the sea ahead, Jiāng Liú smiled. The final success is only one step away. As long as you get the red historical text on Zhao Island, you can determine the location of the last island among the 4 islands. One Piece is already here. If you want to go to Zhao Island, you have to rely on a permanent pointer. That island is constantly moving in the sea, and it's hard to be sure. Waldo said in a deep voice. This is not a problem for us. Jiāng Liú smiled. Of course, besides, didn't General Sukiyaki talk about it? Wanokuni and Zhou Island have always been the relationship between allies, and your identity as captain can also come in handy. Cyrus said. Jiāng Liú smiled and nodded. He didn't think there would be any problems with the trip to Zhao Island. The Black Pearl drove fast on the sea, and 3 days later, they arrived in a misty sea. According to the legend on the sea, there is a giant 18 elephant that often moves in this sea area, and that should be Zuowu Island. The permanent pointer also points not far ahead, Zhou Island is in front. Bin Jack held the permanent pointer in his hand and said in a deep voice. Zhao Island is undoubtedly a rather peculiar island in New World. It can move in the sea and its location is not fixed, and the Fur tribe living on it is also a unique ethnic group. Odin's family, there are Fur people. The 2 cat and dog brothers. Tianyushi said at this moment. They are. Jiāng Liú smiled. The ship continued to move forward, and gradually the fog on the sea ahead dissipated, and the world became clear, but everyone's eyes sharpened. Pirate. Letterfield smiled faintly. A huge pirate ship came into their eyes. The pirate flag fluttered in the wind and was familiar to everyone in the world. The flag pattern was a beckoning skull with a top hat and collar adorned with fluff and lipstick. This banner comes from the Bigum pirates. Bin Jack's eyes condensed slightly, and he said calmly. As the world's top pirate group that defeated Roger and Whitebeard, they naturally wouldn't be afraid of the so-called Bigumum. In Jiāng Liú's view, the opponent is just a pirate of the same level as Kaido now, even if it will shine brightly in the future, but now it is just a little pirate who has just emerged. The Baguma pirates also spotted the black flag at the same time, and the entire ship seemed very quiet. In the face of such a pirate group in the limelight, even Bigumum had to treat it with dignity. Black flag. Today, I really ran into a terrific guy. Drive the boat over, I want to see what the man standing on top of the world looks like. A deep female voice sounded. After the Baguma pirates stayed on the sea for a while, they drove quickly toward the place where the black flag was. In a blink of an eye, the 2 ships were very close, and when they were about to approach, they stopped. Bigumum. There was a gentle male voice from the Black Pearl. Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú. At the same time, Bigum's voice came over. After the 2 captains called each other's names, they stopped speaking, and the 2 big ships also stopped motionless on the sea. But the invisible solemn aura quietly permeated the sea, making everyone feel depressed. After a long while, this quiet atmosphere changed, and Bigum spoke again. I heard about your feat. You can beat the 2 men Roger and Whitebeard. Kaido can't even do a few tricks under your hand. You are very kind, Jiāng Liú. As Begum spoke, he stood up. Jiāng Liú sat cross-legged on the bow of the ship, and when he saw the other person, a flash of surprise flashed in his eyes. Unlike what he had imagined, Begum was slim now, and his face turned out to be normal, which was different from the blessed and ugly appearance in the future. In addition to being somewhat huge, it even gives people a noble and beautiful feeling. Hee hee, Begum, you are blocking my way. Jiāng Liú smiled faintly, a sharp look in his eyes. I stopped in front of you, so naturally I have something to discuss. Begum said loudly. She felt that the majesty of the other party was getting worse, and the strongest man in the world seemed to be angry. Say, Jiāng Liú said. Jiāng Liú, you are unparalleled at the moment, and your strength is amazing. It is better to marry me. Our two pirate groups will marry and become the strongest. I will assist you in becoming the One Piece and let you reach the highest position. Begum said loudly. Jiāng Liú heard this, but his pupils contracted, and after another glance at the other's huge figure, he slowly shook his head. I am married to you, marriage. This is impossible. We don't match at all. One is a giant, and the other is a slightly taller human. First of all, they don't match in size, not to mention that he already has a beautiful and young age. Go away, Begum, I'm not welcome to stand here again. Jiāng Liú said again, his eyes turned cold. Bai Ji Mamu's expression changed and she felt humiliated. Someone turned down her marriage proposal, which made her very embarrassed. I will assist you in becoming the One Piece, Jiāng Liú, to be at the top of the world. She growled again. I become a king and I don't need any help from outsiders. The friends behind me will naturally help me. Jiāng Liú said lightly. Afterwards, he raised his hand and waved abruptly, set sail. Begum received a crit in her heart, and her angry eyes were red, but she couldn't go to war with the opponent. This was a pebble hitting the stone, and she could only order the ship to move away, and watch the man she admired, leaving her. Go. When the black flag gradually disappeared from sight, Begum roared and waved his hand in anger. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú of damn it turned down my marriage proposal, damn it. I won't let you go. The two have only one side, but in the days to come, Begum always believes that the other party hurts his heart and is a man who is heartbroken. Damn it's heartless person, Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú. I will never let you go. The roar of Begum constantly echoed in the sea. Chapter 223. Advertise here. The fog dissipated, the sea was rippled, and the black pearl glided smoothly, and everyone on board was in a good mood. Looking at Jiāng Liú who was sitting on the bow, he was holding back a smile. The captain was actually spotted by Begum. This was undoubtedly a very interesting thing, and it was of great significance to them. Even Tianyushi was covering his mouth at this time, looking at Jiāng Liú's back, grinning slightly. She didn't feel any threat at all, and she could even feel the melancholy atmosphere surrounding the opponent at this time. Obviously, Jiāng Liú also felt very uncomfortable when he was looked at by Begum. This woman is really owed. Looking at the sea ahead, Jiāng Liú sighed softly. It is undoubtedly a headache to be looked at by Begum, which makes him deeply doubt his own appearance and charm. Really, is it that unbearable? The black pearl sailed forward again, following the trajectory of the permanent pointer. After a while, a huge, statue-like horrible thing appeared in front of everyone. The four thighs are like pillars of heaven, stepping deeply in the sea, the body is as huge as an island, the trunk hangs in the air like a bead, and the two ivory tusks are curved and long. This is Elephant Island. Zou Island, the fur tribe lives on the back of a giant elephant. It's so majestic and spectacular. The crew exclaimed, their eyes filled with shock. They have seen Sky Island above the sky of 10,000 meters, and also have partners of the giants, but compared with the Elephant Island in front of them, they lack a sense of shock. It seems to be alive and able to move in the sea, but it is like a dead thing. Orbia said in surprise. But at this moment, Jiāng Liú and Letterfield's expressions became serious. The two looked at each other and both saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Did you hear that too? Jiāng Liú. Yes, I heard the sound from Elephant Island. They all have the ability to listen to the sounds of all things, and they are close to Elephant Island at this moment, and they all heard the inexplicable voice from each other. What a weird island. It seems to be alive. Letterfield solemnly said. It's alive. Jiāng Liú nodded and said. He observed the Elephant Island from a close range at the moment and found that although the other side moved slowly, it was really moving. The whole body was covered with a layer of land, big trees, rocks, and rivers. A huge, prosperous island was formed on the back. It can be said that the existence of the Elephant Island is like a miracle, covering the island on the back of the organism, which is very spectacular. Think about how to get on this island. Waldo said solemnly. This can't trouble them. Jiāng Liú pointed to the other people on the boat. The young crew members such as Leonard, Enel and others are quite energetic. The latter has already turned into an electric light, rushing towards the Elephant Island. Leonard and others are preparing tools and preparing to climb to Elephant Island. Let's take action too, and we can't let young people run ahead of us. Cyrus said with a smile. Everyone started to take action. Except for Moria and others who took the initiative to stay behind to guard the ship because of laziness, everyone else began to climb along the elephant's legs. About an hour later, the crew of the Black Flag gathered together in the jungle on Zou Island. They looked at the city ahead with words of admiration in their eyes. From here, I can't feel it at all. We are standing on the back of a giant elephant at this moment. It's hard to imagine what kind of existence the elephant master of Zhao Island is, and it can be so huge. It's really curious that the fur tribe can survive here. The crew began to discuss. Jiāng Liú stood in the forefront, leading them to the village on Zhao Island. There were no twists and turns along the way. When they approached the jungle of Zuo village, they quickly noticed the fur tribe guarding the big tree. I am the young master of the Wanokuni Shimotsuki clan, please let me know, I have important matters to discuss now. Jiāng Liú sensed the hostility in the opponent's eyes, and quickly said loudly. The Shimotsuki family mark on his clothes clearly showed that the fur tribe's eyes condensed slightly, and after observing them a few times, he nodded. Please wait here for a while and don't act arbitrarily. Otherwise it may cause misunderstanding. Jiāng Liú smiled and nodded. After a while, a group of fur tribes came to them mightily, led by a middle-aged man with scars on his face, with a rapier on his waist, his complexion majestic. Your Excellency is a man from the Wanokuni clan. The middle-aged man saw the mark on Jiāng Liú and asked in a deep voice. Good. Jiāng Liú nodded. Quote. But the group of guys behind you are not like Wanokuni's samurai, but more like pirates. Quote. The middle-aged man's eyes sharpened. I come from the Wanokuni Shimotsuki clan, and my father is Shimotsuki Ushimaru, the patriarch of the Shimotsuki clan. As for the crew behind me, it is my crew. After a pause, Jiāng Liú smiled again. And I am also the captain of the Black Flag pirate group. In the last sentence, the middle-aged man on the opposite side and other fur tribes were shocked, and there was a touch of shock in their eyes. They just defeated the Black Flag pirates of Roger and Whitebeard. The world's #1 pirate group. This man is even more known as the strongest man in the world. The fur tribe caused a sensation, and the reputation of Haichi and Jiāng Liú has spread to the fur tribe, which shocked them. Your Excellency, what are you doing here? The middle-aged man calmed the shock in his heart and asked solemnly. Such a group of pirates, if they want to make trouble, they can't stop the kings. We have not come here maliciously, just to take a look at the red historical texts left here. It is a red stone, which is very important to us. Jiāng Liú said with a smile. Red stone. The middle-aged man of the fur tribe was startled. He took a deep look at Jiāng Liú, lost in thought. In the end, he nodded and said, Your Excellency is a member of the Shimotsuki clan, Wanokuni is an alliance of Zuowu. With such a request, we will naturally not refuse. Please come with me. However, please restrain your crew. We don't want outsiders to destroy the peace in Zhou. Jiāng Liú wouldn't mind the indifference in the other person's attitude, smiled and nodded. Of course, please believe that my crew are all very friendly people. The middle-aged man is non-committal, how could the world's #1 pirate group be a friendly person? Please come with me. Chapter 224. Advertise here. Everything in Zhou went smoothly. The fur tribe kept vigilant against the Black Flag group, but did not stop them. Wanokuni and Zuowu have always had an alliance relationship. As the young master of the Shimotsuki family, Jiāng Liú has an unusual status. Soon after, under the leadership of the fur clan leader, Jiāng Liú saw the red historical text. Bin Jack stepped forward to make rubbings, and Orbia recorded the island location recorded on it. When everything was completed, the entire group of pirates looked extremely excited. This is the text of the last signpost, and getting his location also means that they are about to get the coordinates of the last island on the Grand Line. Captain, we are finally going to succeed. Waldo looked very excited. The others are also smiling. Enel, Leonard and others are trembling even more. It seems that you all know the meaning of this historical text. Not long ago, the fur clan also received a group of pirates. One of them was also Wanokuni. He called himself the Kazuki clan. The leader of the fur tribe looked at the crowd and found that nothing happened, so he was slightly relieved and was willing to talk to them. Is it Roger? Jiāng Liú smiled. Yes, it's the Roger pirates. He is also a very charming captain. The leader of the middle-aged fur tribe nodded. It seems that their speed is not much slower than ours. Jiāng Liú thoughtfully. Of course, compared to you guys from the Roger pirates, it's a great time to get along with some young people in our clan. The fur clan leader said again. Haha, we also want to stay here more time to get to know each other, but it seems that we are leaving now. Jiāng Liú shook his head and smiled. Are you in such a hurry? The fur clan leader said in surprise. He thought the opponent would stay for a few days at least. No, this matter is in a hurry. We are the last step, only to arrive. Jiāng Liú shook his head, then stood up. Then, I have a chance to meet again in the future, friends of the fur tribe. Afterwards, the Haichi group quickly left. They came quickly and went quickly, which surprised the fur tribe. The red stone, it seems to be a very important thing. The middle-aged man thoughtfully said. From Ko Chong, the Black Pearl soon set sail again. The text of the 4 road signs mark the directions of the 4 islands, and draw a line with them as the origin. The intersection of the 4 lines is the last island. As long as you board that island, the captain will become an unprecedented pirate king. Bin Jack took out the sea chart, quickly determined the location of the 4 islands, then scribed lines, and finally used a red pen to circle the place where the last island was located. After seeing the island on the map, everyone's eyes lit up. So everyone, Our next goal is the end of the Grand Line. Jiāng Liú said with a big laugh. The dream is right in front of you, Captain. What do you want to do after you become the One Piece? Enel asked curiously. I don't know yet, maybe I will go to the future after I have settled everyone. Jiāng Liú smiled and said. All of this can only be decided after reaching the last island. I always felt that there was something unexpected on that island. Everyone was stunned. When the captain is about to succeed and become king, he seems to be in a mixed mood. What is he thinking? The Black Pearl sailed at full speed and swiftly headed towards the last island marked on the chart. On the other side, the Roger pirate group has also reached Wanokuni. Last stop, Odin, this is your hometown, I have to ask you. Roger laughed. When he finished speaking, his expression suddenly changed, then he bent over and began to vomit blood, which terrified everyone on the boat. But after a while, Roger laughed again. Scared you? I'm totally fine. Ha 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 ha. There was a clamor on the Jackson. Shanks stood in the corner, worried in his eyes, and the buggy beside him was grumbling and complaining that the captain always scared himself. Don't worry, Roger, I will do my best to help you achieve your dream. At the same time, this is also my dream. Kazuki Odin said firmly. Traveling along this road, Roger's spirit and will made him feel admiration, and this man made him feel respect from the bottom of his heart. Roger, really is a great person. After a while, they met Kazuki Sukiyaki in the capital of flowers. What, has Jiāng Liú been here? He has received the message of the red stone. Kazuki Odin exclaimed in shock. Although I don't know why you weren't on the same boat after you went to sea, but Odin, Jiāng Liú or us Wanokuni, a rare figure in hundreds of years. Kazuki Sukiyaki said solemnly. Roger was not worried at this time, but laughed. If it's Jiāng Liú, isn't this normal? Odin. It doesn't matter what they are doing, we just need to follow our own voyage and work hard to reach the last island and the next destination. His words calmed down Kazuki Odin's chaotic mood. You are right, Roger, as long as we reach the last island too. Kazuki Sukiyaki watched Roger, and after a while, his heart was also amazed. It's no wonder that his son would surrender to this man so much, he is indeed a very kingly and charming guy. Soon, the Roger pirates set off from Wanokuni. The position of the last island has been determined, let's go there, guys. Standing at the bow, Roger shouted with a laugh. After shouting, he vomited blood again, causing the whole ship to jump around. Time is advancing rapidly, and the most lively thing discussed at this time in the entire world is when Jiāng Liú became the One Piece. Every day, news about Jiāng Liú is quickly printed in the newspapers, such as which island someone has seen the Black Flag Gang, and which pirate group has encountered them. One interesting thing is that the incident in which Bigum chanted Jiāng Liú as a negative person also caused an uproar in the world. Ha 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 ha. On the Jackson, Roger held the newspaper and laughed. This thing is so interesting. Chapter 225. Advertise here. Sea Circle Calendar 1497. The waves on the sea were undulating, and the sea breeze passed by. A black pirate ship, flying a pure black flag, is moving forward fast. From time to time, there were bursts of lively singing from this ship, and a burst of wine and water drifted in, leaving a string of temperatures above the sea. Boom. In the sky, the thunder roared, the golden thunder and lightning intertwined, gleaming brilliant light, and the gathering of dark clouds made the whole sea look gloomy. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. On the boat, someone shouted excitedly. Jiāng Liú sat on the bow of the ship, looking at the island in front of him in the dark clouds, with a smile on his face. After nearly several months of voyage, they finally reached the last island indicated by the red road signs. Now, the island is close in front of them, not far from them. At the last stop of the Grand Line, as long as you board it, you will become the One Piece and crowned king. Success is only one step away. Come on, brothers, celebrate our success. Jiāng Liú raised his wine glass and shouted loudly. In an instant, everyone on the deck screamed, whistled in excitement, and drank heavily. Boom. The thunder rang overhead, and there would be rainstorms pouring down at any time, but even so, it couldn't stop the fiery emotions of everyone in the pirate group. They were excited, screaming, and jumping for joy. Letterfield grinned wildly, Cyrus roared to vent, Waldo kept toasting with a smile on his face, Karma, Arlong, Hody Jones and others danced. This was the last stop of their voyage, and smiles appeared on everyone's faces. I still remember the encounter with the captain. Vardo showed nostalgia on his face. Everyone present also showed memories on their faces, and before they knew it, smiles filled their faces. There is no doubt that this is a free and beautiful voyage. The encounter with each other will become the most precious memory in this life. Because of fate, they met, and then became partners, brothers who depended on life and death. Captain, everyone is very happy, why is there a trace of sadness? Enel was a little puzzled. He felt sensitively that everyone felt a little lost. Perhaps because of the end of a voyage. This sea will eventually come to an end by us, and we are about to reach the last island. Jiāng Liú said softly, are we going to separate? Enel was stunned and asked nervously. We will start a whole new journey. Jiāng Liú burst out laughing. With that said, he stood up and touched Enel's head. The Black Pearl was already very close to the island ahead, and under the hazy fog, a huge island with a green forest gradually appeared. This is the end of the Grand Line. Half a quarter of an hour later, the Black Pearl docked on this very mysterious island in the eyes of the world. The crew of the Black Flag, all of them landed on the island. At twilight that day, bursts of laughter came out, and under the golden eyes, everyone's faces were reflected in golden, very dazzling. Ha 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 ha, I didn't expect this to be the so-called secret treasure. It's really interesting, it's really a big secret treasure. But these things are not important to us at all. The important thing is that we have each other and everything we have experienced together. Ha 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 ha. The laughter never stopped. In the evening, the Black Pearl left the island. The Black Flag pirates completed a voyage around the Grand Line. This news shocked the world and quickly spread on every island and every corner. The Black Flag pirate group has succeeded, and Jiāng Liú has become an unprecedented pirate king. Big news, Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, a samurai from Wanokuni, became the One Piece. One Piece was born. His name is Shimotsuki Jiāng Liú, the world's #1 strong, the #1 swordsman in the world. Around the world, people were holding newspapers, the streets began to spread, shocked voices continued to spread. Holy land Mariajoy. This man, what information did he get when he arrived at that island? The emergence of One Piece in the world is a huge impact for the world government. Perhaps, we must take measures. The action against Jiāng Liú must start as soon as possible. Such a fanatic, a mob, is even more threatening than Roger. Find flowers. In the magnificent palace, 5 elders made their voices one after another, their expressions serious and solemn. On the Jackson. After all, Jiāng Liú is still one step ahead of us. Roger stood on the bow and said softly. Roger, we succeeded too, didn't we? Rayleigh said with a smile. Behind him, everyone on the boat looked expectant, without any sadness or loss. The voyage of the Roger pirates is about to reach the end, and in front of them is the island, shrouded in golden mist. Yes, we succeeded too. Let's celebrate together, guys. Roger laughed loudly, shaking his head. 0, 0. After a while, they also boarded the final island. What does Jiāng Liú call this island? Roger asked with a smile as he stepped onto the shore. Raftel, Lawtail, Rayleigh replied with a smile. Everyone circled the island for a week. When they saw something on the island, they all laughed, and their tears of laughter came out. Rayleigh, we are not late, but early. 20 years early. Roger sighed. Jiāng Liú gave this island a name, which fits my heart very well. Ha 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 ha. He laughed loudly, and the crew also smiled, but there was some unerasable sadness in his eyes. Everyone seemed to have predicted something at this moment. A crew member was quietly wiping tears, but was afraid that Roger would see it. I really want to see how exciting the world will be in the future. But unfortunately, I definitely can't see it anymore. Roger said with a laugh. His energy looks very good. Rayleigh's glasses flashed, and he reached out and held Roger, but said nothing. Everyone, on my behalf, keep watching. After a pause, he smiled again. Now, I am curious, Jiāng Liú who also saw all this. How will he choose, and what will he do next? After all, like me, he came early too. At this point, Roger laughed. 10,000.